The suffocating feeling gripped me tightly. Cold handcuffs dug deep into my wrist bones. And the interrogation light seared my eyes, making it impossible to open them. In my ears, I could hear Rainey, my best friend, desperately crying out, "Ren, I'm sorry. I really didn't know it would end up like this. It's all their fault. They forced me." Then, let out a low sigh. My brother Hugo, with his cowardice and selfishness, was trying to defend himself. "Sis, how du fulfilled my ancestor. You're the one who can fix this. Just admit it. Mom and Dad can't live without me." And finally, the man I once worshipped like a god, Kieran, spoke with icy indifference. His voice laced with disdain. "Ren, no. The evidence is clear. What else is there to say?" Despair, like a cold tide, overwhelmed me, drowning out my breath. When I opened my eyes again, all I could see was the swaying chandelier in a university classroom, the professor's monotonous lecture humming in the background. I quickly lowered my head, and on the open notebook in front of me were the hasty, messy words I had written without realizing. What should I do? My handwriting was frantic and disordered. My phone screen was flashing uncontrollably. A flood of unread messages and missed calls from Rainey filling the lock screen. The latest one read, "Ren. Where are you? I had another fight with him. He wants to break up with me. I can't go on like this heartbreak crying." Then another text popped up. This one from Hugo, "Sis, having fulfilled my ancestor. Urgent. I'm eyeing a limited edition AJ pair. Just 3. Isaro short. Please help. I'll pay you back next month when my allowance comes in." Smiley. My heart skipped a beat and then started racing wildly. I would never forget this scene. It was today. This moment. Because I was worried that Rainey might do something stupid, I skipped class to comfort her. I listened to her cry for an entire afternoon. Missed important lecture notes. And even paid for a meal and shopping spree to cheer her up. That evening, I gritted my teeth and transferred the 3,000 to Hugo money I had saved up for a new computer for my design work. He never paid me back. And within a month, he grew tired of the shoes. And from that moment on, it was like the first domino had fallen. Rainey's obsession with her relationships and dependence on me grew more intense, while Hugo's requests became more entitled. Meanwhile, I, like a sponge drained of life, was dragged deeper into their mess. And eventually, I was lost beyond redemption. The pressure in my palm from gripping it so tightly stung. The sensation of my nails digging into my skin felt so real. This was not a dream. I, Ren, 22 years old, have returned to my third year of university. Everything was still salvageable. A mixture of immense rage and wild joy surged through me. And I almost trembled with it. But I bit my lower lip hard, forcing myself to stay calm. I took a deep breath, then slowly exhaled. The debts of my past life would be settled one by one in this life. The first thing I needed to do was to draw a clear line between them and me. I picked up my phone. My fingers cold but steady. I opened Hugo's message first and typed a response, "No. Handle your own expenses from now on. Send." Next, I opened Rainey's WeChat. Her messages were flooding in, all full of emotional breakdowns and accusations about her scumbag boyfriend. In my past life, I would have been heartbroken and immediately called her. Now, I looked at the screen impassively, read through the messages, and then replied, "I'm in class. Breakups are between two people. It's your decision." I paused, then added something I would never have said in the past, something cold and almost cruel: "Follow your heart, and whatever choice you make, I'll support you." Follow your self-destructive heart. Go ahead. Don't hesitate. Send. Then, let out a low sigh. Decisively, I long pressed the chat window and selected Do Not Disturb. The world instantly became quiet. The professor's voice became suddenly clearer. I opened my pristine new notebook, grabbed my pen, and began writing down the points from the blackboard. The sound of my pen scratching across the paper was the most beautiful music to my ears at that moment. In this life, I would never again extend my hand to pull up those who were destined to sink. I would only stand on the shore, quietly watching them, then walk toward my own blooming future. The class bell rang. I packed my things and stepped out of the classroom. My phone rang sharply. On the screen, Rainey was stubbornly flashing. I raised an eyebrow and answered, but didn't speak. On the other end of the line came her breathless sobs. Ren, why did you just ignore me? What did you mean by what you said? Aren't you going to comfort me? Don't you love me anymore? I'm in so much pain. The familiar moral coercion. Every word accusing me. I walked over to the window, looking down at the bustling crowd below, full of life. My voice was calm, almost with a trace of light-hearted confusion. Comfort you? Comfort you into once again lowering your standards to forgive that scumbag who cheated, stole your money, and treated you like dirt? Rainey, I'm really sick of your love drama. The crying on the other end of the line stopped abruptly. There was a deathly silence on the other end of the call. Only heavy, incredulous breathing. I could imagine Rainey's expression at this moment. Her once innocent, Navi face must be filled with shock and anger at being offended. She probably never thought I, the one who had always tolerated her, always caught her negative emotions, would suddenly say something so sharp and precise. A few seconds later, her voice shot up, sharp and aggrieved. Ren, how can you say that to me? Are you even still my friend? I'm so upset. And instead of comforting me, you mock me? Don't you know how horrible he's been this time? She seemed like she wanted to repeat the same tired list of offenses from the scumbag, trying to pull me back into her pitiful drama where the world revolves around her. But I didn't give her that chance. I interrupted her, my voice still calm, even carrying a subtle, almost imperceptible smile, as if discussing the weather. I know. He's always been horrible. Hasn't he? Cheating, let out a low sigh. Stealing money. Disappearing, same old. Same old. Nothing new. And you? You forgive him every time. Cry every time. Say you can't go on every time. And then repeat the cycle. I paused, giving her a moment to digest this slap in the face, then continued, deliberately slow. Rainey, I'm not a fortune teller. I can't predict when you'll once again, for the nth time, feel like you can't go on because he flirted with someone. Your endless sob story? I'm sick of it. I've heard enough. You. She was choked up, unable to finish her sentence, her breath coming in quick bursts, mixed with the shame and fury of having her truth exposed. In my past life, at moments like this, I would have immediately softened, regretted my harsh words, and hurried to apologize and comfort her. But now, I only felt a sense of relief. Ren, you've changed. You're heartless. She finally regained her voice, her words laced with a sobbing accusation. Don't you want to see me happy? Are you jealous because I dared to sacrifice everything for love? Look at that. Selfish people always have their own twisted logic, able to twist your independence and clarity into jealousy, and interpret the boundaries you set as cold-heartedness. I almost laughed out loud. You're right. I went along with her words, my tone light. I am jealous of how you always manage to find men in the trash and treat them like treasures. And yes, I am heartless enough not to sympathize with you anymore. I walked toward the plaza in front of the library, the sun shining just right, warm against my skin. A flock of pigeons fluttered by. As for sacrificing everything for love? I chuckled. Is that really love you're giving? It's self-pity and desperation. And by the way, you dragged your parents and friends into it too. I honestly suggest you think about the tears your parents shed for you next time you sacrifice. And don't forget the $2,000 you borrowed from me last time and never paid back. At the mention of money, her energy deflated. I'll pay you back. No rush. I said generously, adding to myself, it's not like you can pay me back anyway. Consider it tuition for a lesson well learned. Enjoy your love life. I said. This time, I won't stop you. I hope you get what you want and lock him down for life. Just make sure you don't break up and ruin other people. After that, I hung up the phone before she could explode, quickly switching her contact to Do Not Disturb. The world was peaceful once more. No, scratch that. It was even better. The sunlight seemed brighter, and the air smelled of freedom. The feeling of shedding the first burden was unbelievably good. I didn't go back to my dorm. Rainy might be waiting by the door. Instead, I turned toward the library's quietest reading room on the top floor. Spreading out my textbooks, I focused and began making up for the knowledge I had missed in my past life. The pen glided across the paper, my thoughts clearer than ever. It turned out that when you invest your time and energy into yourself, instead of dealing with other people's messes, your efficiency skyrockets. I don't know how long it had been when my phone lit up again. It was Hugo. He had sent a long string of voice messages. I clicked on them, and his frantic voice blasted through the speaker. "Sis. What's going on? You won't even give me the 3,000? Are you even my sister? My classmates already bought it. What am I supposed to do now? I'm telling Mom if you don't send it over." See? The same old tactics. If he couldn't get what he wanted, he'd threaten. In my past life, I'd been afraid of worrying my parents, always trying to keep the peace. But now? I typed back, concise and to the point. "Oh. Go ahead and tell Mom. And while you're at it, remind her that you borrowed the money for your retakes last semester from me too." I hit send, imagining the look of defeat on his face. I closed my book in satisfaction. Today's study session had been so productive. Just as I stepped out of the library, ready to treat myself to something nice at the cafeteria, a familiar and unpleasant figure suddenly blocked my path. Rainy. Her eyes were swollen like walnuts, clearly from crying for a long time. She was now glaring at me with a mix of sadness, anger, and disbelief. "Ren." Her voice was hoarse, with an accusatory, tearful edge. "How dare you say that to me? You need to explain yourself today." She reached out as if to grab my arm, her posture exactly like the countless times we'd fought in the past life. I took a step back, easily avoiding her pull, my face expressionless as I gazed at her coolly. Curious eyes from passing students were now on us. Rainy seemed even more aggrieved, her tears welling up again, her voice rising. "Didn't we used to be best friends? You just stand there and watch me suffer and do nothing? Do you have any idea how long I've been trying to reach you? You didn't answer your phone. You didn't reply to my messages. How could you do this?" She was trying to emotionally blackmail me with the weight of our friendship. I watched her performance silently, letting her finish before I tilted my head slightly and asked in a near innocent tone, clearly posing the crucial question. "Why should I care? Care about what? Is it to help you curse that scumbag for 3 hours, only to see you cuddling with him and posting couple photos the next day? Or should I lend you money again so you can buy him some gift he casually mentioned he liked, hoping to win him back? Or maybe, like last time, go with you to confront him, only to watch you switch sides and then accuse me of being too harsh with my words?" Each of my questions landed like a hammer, hitting the truth she was trying so hard to cover up. Her face slowly drained of color, her gaze dodging mine. I took a step closer, my voice low but carrying an icy sharpness. "Rainy, your pain comes from your own choices, not from whether I help you or not. Your love war. You fight it yourself, whether you win or lose. The consequences are yours to bear." I'm done. With that, I walked around her, frozen in place, pale-faced, and made my way toward the cafeteria. As I took a few steps, I could still feel her shocked and vengeful gaze on my back. But so what? The sunlight ahead of me was warm and bright. I knew this was just the beginning, but I was ready. The food in the cafeteria seemed much tastier than in my past life. I'll easily finished a well-balanced lunch, savoring the real energy food provided, unlike my previous life when I rushed through meals with my mind consumed by other people's problems. There were no classes in the afternoon. By the script of my past life, I should now be at a mall with Rainy, listening to her repeat her complaints, carefully choosing my words so as not to speak ill of her boyfriend because she would instantly defend him, yet still needing to appear sympathetic. Wasting time, draining emotions, pure self-torture. But now, I had plenty of precious, peaceful time to myself. I went back to my dorm. My luck was good. My roommates were either out or napping, leaving the room eerily quiet. I opened my laptop, ignoring the incessant bombardment of messages and missed calls from Rainy and Hugo despite the do not disturb setting. They were still flooding in. Instead, I clicked on a well-known design freelancing platform. In my previous life, my academic performance wasn't bad, and I had some talent for design. But I was constantly distracted by various other things. The freelance work I did, though, barely covered the holes Hugo and Rainey created. By the time I graduated, my resume was practically empty. This time, I was going to make good use of my skills, build up a portfolio, save money, and more importantly, accumulate the kind of confidence no one could take away from me. I browsed the list of available projects, focused on selecting tasks that matched both my current skill level and available time. Soon, I found a project, designing a series of social media promotional images for a niche bookstore. The budget was modest, but the requirements were clear, making it perfect for practice. Time flew as I immersed myself in the work. When I finally finished the first draft and stretched with satisfaction, the setting sun was already casting long shadows outside the window. The time in the corner of my screen read 700 p.m. Meanwhile, my phone screen was flooded with unread messages and missed calls. Most from Rainey and Hugo, mixed with a few unread WeChat messages from my mother. My heart sank. It seemed that Hugo had really gone and complained. I opened my mother's messages first. Ren, Hugo said you refused to help him and said some harsh things? What's going on? Brother and sister should help each other. After all, he's your brother. Do you have enough money? If not, I can send you some more. Reading these messages, I felt a wave of mixed emotions. My mother was a typical traditional figure, a bit biased towards sons over daughters. But that didn't mean she didn't love me. She just always believed in family harmony, and habitually expected me, the sensible daughter, to yield to my reckless brother. In my previous life, this attitude of hers, constantly smoothing things over, had inadvertently become the shield that allowed Hugo to take advantage of me without hesitation. I took a deep breath and didn't immediately reply to her. Instead, I clicked open Hugo's barrage of voice messages. The first few were full of impotent rage and accusations. Then, read on a low sigh, the last few suddenly shifted to a tone of panic. Ren, help. I think I've gotten myself into trouble. I accidentally knocked over Parker's limited edition figurine and broke it. He's asking for $5,000 to replace it. Ren, you have to help me. He said if I don't pay by tomorrow, he'll go to my counselor. If Dad finds out, he'll kill me. Parker? I remembered him. He came from a family with some money, had an arrogant personality, and was exactly the type of person Hugo, driven by vanity, tried hard to befriend, only to end up being bullied. I remembered this figurine incident from my past life too. It wasn't Hugo being careless at all. He recklessly picked up the figurine to show off and dropped it. How had I responded in my past life? I drained my remaining living expenses, borrowed from my roommates, and scraped together the $5,000 to transfer to him in the middle of the night, surviving on nothing but steamed buns and pickles for an entire month. And him? A flimsy thanks. Sis was all I got. And before long, he was back at it again, asking for money to buy a new game skin. My fingers grew cold, yet the corner of my mouth curled into a bitter smile. Trouble? This was just the beginning. Hugo, enjoy the mess you've created for yourself. This is the true face of your fate. I exited his chat and then reopened my mom's WeChat. After a moment's thought, I carefully composed my response. Mom, I have enough money. Don't worry. I know about Hugo's situation. It's reasonable for the other party to ask for compensation after he broke their expensive item. I'm in my third year now, with heavy coursework and future plans. I need money for professional materials and software. As for Hugo's compensation, it should come from his living allowance or he should figure it out himself. Or, you and Dad can handle it. I'm no longer in a position, nor do I have the obligation, to fill his holes repeatedly. What do you think? I sent the message. I knew this would likely confuse or upset my mom. But I had to start setting boundaries now, not just with Hugo, but also with my parents. I put down my phone and let out a long, heavy breath. After dealing with this mess, I felt empty in my stomach. I grabbed my meal card and decided to grab a bite. The campus was quieter at night. Its daytime bustle faded into a peaceful stillness. The streetlet stretched the shadows of the sycamore trees long across the ground. I walked toward the food street, enjoying the quiet solitude. It was only when I passed by the back door of the library, down a secluded path, that I heard muffled arguing nearby, mixed with the sounds of shoving and whispered threats. Damn it. Don't be stupid. Hand over the money. Be smart. Man. Just borrow some money for the internet. Look at you. Dressed like you've got money, no cash? Who's gonna believe that? I hesitated, instinctively wanting to hurry away from the commotion. University campuses aren't completely safe, and avoiding such trouble was usually the wisest choice. But just as I was about to turn away, a cold, restrained voice pierced the night. I said, "No. Move aside." That voice. I stopped in my tracks, driven by a strange impulse, and peered into the dimly lit street. A few rough-looking students, clearly troublemakers, were surrounding a tall, slim boy. The boy in the middle, wearing a simple white shirt and black pants, stood straight-backed, not the least bit intimidated. Even though he was clearly outnumbered, he was turned slightly towards me, with a high nose bridge, his jaw tight. He was clutching an old canvas backpack in his hands. It was Silas, the quiet, top-performing student from our department who always kept to himself. There were rumors about his poor family background, and in my past life, I barely had any interactions with him. I only knew that he'd gotten into trouble after a violent fight and received disciplinary action, nearly failing to graduate. Afterward, he disappeared from the scene, a fate I found regretful. Was this the incident? My heart skipped a beat. Rationality told me to leave immediately, not to get involved in other people's mess. But the regret I'd felt for his downfall in my past life, combined with the stubborn, isolated defiance I saw now as he faced multiple opponents alone, inexplicably tugged at a chord deep inside me. Though our situations were different, it seemed as if we both struggled in the mud of fate. More importantly, if I ran now, how was I any different from those who coldly watched as I fell into the abyss in my past life? Damn it. You're asking for it. A thug with yellow hair lost his patience and swung a punch straight at Silas's face. In a split second, my brain overheated. I didn't care about the consequences. I quickly pulled out my phone, activated the flashlight, and without hesitation, shone it directly at the faces of the thugs, while shouting with all my might, "Security! Over here! It's them! They're causing trouble! Come quickly!" My voice was sharp and piercing, cutting through the silent night. The thugs, suddenly blinded by the bright light and hearing the word security, froze in place. A flash of panic crossed their faces. Who the hell is that? Run! Taking advantage of their distraction, Silas reacted swiftly. He elbowed one of them out of his way and broke free from the encirclement. Seeing the situation turning against them, the thugs cursed and shot a glare in my direction. But ultimately, having fulfilled they didn't dare to get entangled. They quickly disappeared into the darkness at the end of the alley. The flashlight was still on, and the beam now only illuminated Silas, who was slightly out of breath and looking somewhat disheveled. He turned his head to look at me. The light flickered, and he squinted slightly. There seemed to be a small scratch on his forehead, with a hint of blood, but his eyes were sharp, with a lingering wariness and obvious surprise, staring straight at me. Our gazes met. The air felt momentarily still. I was the first to react, turning off the flashlight, and the surroundings instantly darkened, with only the faint glow of distant streetlight visible. "Are you okay?" I spoke awkwardly, realizing that my actions had been a bit foolish, but unable to simply walk away. He was silent for a few seconds, as if assessing me. Then, hadn't fulfilled my session. His voice, still cool, softened a bit. "I'm fine. Thanks." He adjusted the collar of his shirt, which had gotten messed up in the struggle, bent down to pick up a few books that had fallen during the scuffle, dusted them off, and stuffed them back into his faded canvas bag. "It was nothing," I awkwardly replied, preparing to leave. Just be careful next time you're out at night. Wait. He suddenly called out to me. I turned back in confusion. He took a couple of steps forward, reached into his bag, and handed me something. It was a small pack of individually wrapped antiseptic wipes and a Band-Aid sheet. Everyday items. Your hand, he said succinctly. I looked down and only then noticed that my right hand had a thin scratch across the back, oozing a small bead of blood. It was probably from when I had been frantically waving my phone around in the chaos. I hadn't even realized it. I froze. He had just been in a confrontation himself, with a wound on his forehead, yet he had noticed my insignificant injury first. Thank you. I took it, feeling a strange sensation in my chest. He didn't say anything more, just gave me a small nod, as if to say goodbye, then turned and walked away, quickly blending into the night. His silhouette was still upright, but there was an inexplicable sense of loneliness about it. I stood there, holding the antiseptic wipes, still warm from his fingertips, watching as his figure disappeared into the darkness. A complex emotion stirred within me, something I couldn't quite put into words. Helping others really does bring trouble. For instance, now, my cool self-preservation attitude seemed to have cracked open a tiny gap, but oddly enough, this trouble didn't seem entirely unwelcome. Back in the dorm, the cold sensation of the antiseptic wipes still lingered on my fingertips. I placed the cheap Band-Aid and antiseptic wipes, with their cartoon packaging, in the drawer. The strange emotions inside me were soon overshadowed by the pressing reality. On my phone screen, I found my mother's missed calls, 3 of them. Hugo's barrage of voice messages had escalated to over 60, the last few filled with clear signs of crying and panic, even starting to beg incoherently. I knew the storm was coming. Sure enough, as soon as I plugged in my charger, my phone buzzed again. The screen flashed Mom. I took a deep breath and walked to the balcony at the end of the dorm corridor. Answering the call, the night breeze carried a coolness, refreshing against my face and clearing my mind. Hello, Mom. I tried to keep my voice steady. On the other end, there was no immediate scolding. Instead, there was a pause followed by my mom's weary and cautious voice. Ren, are you asleep? Not yet. I was drawing. A bit busy. I casually mentioned work, subtly hinting that I had more important things to focus on. Oh, well, it's good to be busy. She paused, unsure how to start. Well, about Hugo. He called me again, crying, saying his classmate is pressuring him and wants to talk to the teacher. Ren, you see, 5,000 isn't a small amount. How can he afford it as a student? Your dad will be so angry if he finds out. He might end up in the hospital. Here it was. The same old trick. Using my father's health and the family's stability to manipulate me. It worked every time in my past life. But now, I gripped the phone firmly, my voice clear and resolute. Mom, hadn't fulfilled my obsession. First of all, Hugo is 20 years old. He's an adult. If he damages someone's property, it's only right that he compensates for it. Whether it's through the teacher or the police, it's his right to pursue it that way. Hugo's afraid because he knows he's in the wrong and can't handle the consequences. My mom was momentarily silent, surprised by my calm, logical response. I continued. Secondly, I don't have any extra money. My allowance is just enough for my daily expenses and study materials. The 3,000 he borrowed last time is still unpaid, and I haven't even saved up for the books I need next month. Finally, I stressed. Mom, you and Dad are his parents. It's your responsibility to guide and educate him. This time it's 5,000. Next time it could be 50,000. Can you support him for life? Let him face the consequences once, let him fall, and feel the pain so he knows to be more careful in the future. There was a long silence on the other end. Only the sound of my mom's heavy breathing. I knew my words were harsh, even cold-hearted, but I had to set the boundary. After a long while, my mom's voice came through, weak and disapproving. Ren, how did you become so cold? He's your brother. Shouldn't we help each other as a family? You're out there studying, seeing the world. And now you look down on the family and don't want to help your brother? Cold-hearted? I repeated the words. A bitter, cold laugh rising in my chest. Mom, if I were heartless, I wouldn't have saved up my meal money to buy him new sneakers. Or bailed him out over and over until I was in debt. Who's really heartless here? It's Hugo. Who only knows how to take, never give thanks. And when trouble comes, he pushes his sister out to take the blame. My voice rose slightly, carrying the pent-up frustration I'd been holding back for so long. Mom, what has my help gotten me? More of his entitled demands and self-righteousness. This isn't helping. It's enabling. If you really cared for him, you'd teach him to take responsibility. Not always expect others to clean up his mess. After I spoke, both ends of the line fell silent. The night air made me shiver slightly. I knew my words had cut deep, perhaps shattering the illusion my mother had always clung to, the idea of a harmonious family. But she had to face it. Finally, my mom let out a long, weary sigh. Her tone filled with mixed emotions, helplessness, anger at being challenged, and perhaps a hint of guilt at the truth she was confronted with. You have a point. But 5,000, the money issue. You and Dad should figure out how to handle it. Or Hugo can talk to his classmate about a payment plan and maybe get a part-time job to earn it. I offered what seemed like a reasonable solution, though it would likely leave Hugo in quite a bind. This is his problem. He has to solve it himself. I softened my tone slightly. Mom, it's not that I don't recognize this family. I just want us all to be well. But the first step to that is making sure I take care of myself. Mom, I'm tired. Really tired. The last sentence, drenched in real exhaustion, hit a nerve with my mom. She loved me, after all, her way, though flawed. All right. I get it. Her tone softened, though tinged with annoyance. You get some rest. Your studies are important. I'll talk to your dad. Sigh. That boy. He really doesn't make things easy for us. After hanging up, I leaned against the cold balcony railing and exhaled deeply. I had barely managed the first battle of boundary setting. I knew it wasn't over yet. My parents' attitudes would likely shift again. And Hugo wouldn't back down quietly. But there was no turning back. Back in the dorm, I blocked all the irrelevant messages and forced myself to focus on the design draft. I spent another 2 hours making revisions, only submitting it once I was satisfied. Then, I collapsed into bed. Unexpectedly, I had a dreamless night. In the following days, I deliberately kept a low profile and stayed busy. Rainey tried to corner meet Weiss in the dorm, but I either timed it so we missed each other or simply ignored her tear-filled stares, walking with my roommates to avoid giving her a chance to confront me alone. Her emotions seemed to shift from frustration and anger to a simmering resentment. But I didn't care. Her fate had nothing to do with me. There was no word from Hugo for now. I didn't know if my mom had temporarily suppressed him or if he was scrambling to fix things on his own. Either way, I relished the peace. I spent most of my time in the library and computer lab. A design draft I submitted for the bookstore project quickly received positive feedback from the client. They were very satisfied, paid promptly, and even gave me a bonus, promising to contact me for similar projects in the future. Looking at the few $100 extra in my account, the sense of accomplishment felt far stronger than when I'd been bailing others out in my past life. That afternoon, I was focused on learning new modeling software in the computer lab. The complex interface and operations gave me a bit of a headache. I was so absorbed that I didn't notice when someone sat next to me. It wasn't until I got stuck on a step and muttered quietly to myself, "Weird. Why isn't this render parameter right?" that I heard a calm voice beside me. "Try switching the GI secondary bounce engine to light cache. Set the accuracy to around 1000. I jumped, startled, and turned quickly. Sitting next to me at the workstation was Silas. His eyes fixed on his own screen, fingers flying over the keys. His profile was cold and detached, as though he hadn't spoken a word just now. How could he be here? And how did he know this? I froze for a few seconds before realizing he was offering me advice. I adjusted the settings as he suggested, and sure enough, The render preview that had been stuttering smoothed out. And the results improved. "Thank you," I said quietly. Still a bit surprised. He didn't turn his head. Just gave a brief hem in response. The lab was filled only with the soft clatter of keyboards and the hum of machines running. We both went back to our work. Without another word. But this brief, professional interaction, strange as it was, didn't make me uncomfortable. In fact, it had a calming, mutual understanding to it, like we were each in our own world, working hard and undisturbed. The class bell rang, and I saved my file, preparing to leave. As I stood up, I caught a glimpse of Silas closing his old laptop. Before the screen went dark, it seemed to display a programming competition registration page. He slung his worn canvas bag over his shoulder and left first, his back still aloof and independent. I trailed behind slowly, my curiosity about him growing. This Silas seemed even more impressive and a little more mysterious than I'd imagined. Just as I stepped out of the computer lab building, my phone began vibrating like crazy. It was my dad calling. A sinking feeling filled my chest. It was inevitable. It was finally here. I answered the call, and my father's voice, heavy with barely contained anger, immediately came crashing through. "Ren, you need to come home right now. We need to talk face to face. Do you even care about this family anymore?" The sound of my father's shouting seemed to linger in my ears as I hung up the phone. Go home? It was no longer a warm sanctuary, but a battleground waiting to be opened. I didn't hesitate. I wasn't scared. There was a determination in me, as if it had been inevitable all along. I couldn't avoid this fight. I had to face it and win it beautifully. I took a leave of absence and bought the next high-speed train ticket home. As the scenery outside the train window sped by, my mind remained unusually calm. I even replayed the keyboard shortcuts for the software I'd been learning. I knew that staying calm and rational would be my best weapon. When I pushed open the door to the house, the heavy air in the room hit me. My father was sitting on the living room couch, his face pale with anger. The ashtray in front of him was overflowing with cigarette butts. My mother sat beside him, her eyes darting away, full of anxiety and unease. When she saw me enter, she opened her mouth to say something but only sighed and lowered her head. Hugo was curled up on the single sofa, his eyes swollen from crying. He wouldn't meet my gaze, his face still carrying traces of fear and resentment. How laughable. The one who caused all this trouble is the one feeling wronged first. "Dad. Mom." I changed my shoes and greeted them in a neutral tone, as if I was simply returning home on an ordinary weekend. "You actually know how to come back." My father slammed his hand on the coffee table, making a loud noise that caused the teacups to rattle. "Now you've got wings. You're so great now. Hugo gets into so much trouble, and instead of helping as his sister, you mock him. You make it sound like I'm asking for your life when I ask you for money. Does our family lack anything because of you? We've raised you this big, only to get a thankless child in return." The barrage of accusations hit me like a storm. Exactly the same as in my past life. It was as if my sole purpose in life was to sacrifice and give everything for Hugo. This time, however, I didn't immediately try to explain myself or cry in frustration. I just stood quietly, waiting for his fury to subside a little. "Dad, are you done?" I looked up and met his furious eyes, slightly red from anger, and said, "If you're done, it's my turn to speak." My calmness clearly took him by surprise. He paused for a moment before his anger surged again. "What more do you have to say?" "First of all," I began clearly, "Hugo broke someone's 5,000 yuan figurine, and the other party is asking for compensation. That's perfectly legal and reasonable. This isn't just a little money, it's 5,000 yuan. How much is my monthly living allowance?" My voice was steady, concise. "Second, I am not an ATM. My living expenses are for my studies and basic needs. I am neither obligated nor able to keep paying for his mistakes. The 3,000 he borrowed last time is still unpaid." Hugo raised his head to argue but immediately shrank back when I gave him a cold stare. "Third," I turned to face my father, my tone becoming more firm, "you asked if the family lacks anything because of me. No, it doesn't. But did you and Mom ever ask what kind of life I'm living at school? How many meals have I had with only steamed buns and pickles? Just to save money for his mess? How many learning opportunities have I missed because I couldn't afford them? My old computer lags so much I can't even do my homework, while he's wearing limited edition sneakers. My mother's body trembled, and she lowered her head even further. My father seemed taken aback by my words, but still tried to maintain his authority. Well, we're family. We should support each other. He's your brother. Can you really just watch him get disciplined? With a mark on his record? Watch. I almost laughed out of frustration. Dad. It's his own hands and vanity that ruined him. Not my lack of help. If you're really worried about his record, you should be teaching him responsibility and how to live within his means. Not pressuring me. Your daughter. I took a deep breath and dropped the final bombshell. Besides, do you really think this is the first time? Do you want to ask your precious son how much money he's borrowed from me over the past 2 years? Under different names? Add it all up, it's over 10,000. All of that money I scraped together with my own hands. Did you know about any of this? The living room fell into a deadly silence. My mother shot up, her eyes wide with disbelief, looking at Hugo, then back at me, her lips trembling. Ren, is that true? Hugo. Hugo's face turned as pale as paper, and he shouted in protest. You're lying. I didn't. Mom. Dad. She's accusing me. Bank transfer records. WeChat. Alipay records still there. I coldly interrupted. Do you want me to pull them out one by one and calculate for you? The evidence was irrefutable. Hugo went completely silent, slumping on the sofa, his face ashen. My father's face went from pale to purple, his chest rising and falling sharply. He looked at me, then at his useless son, his eyes filled with shock, disappointment, and a sense of confusion. His whole perception shattered. He had always thought the family was harmonious, that his children were well behaved, but little did he know that the foundation had already rotted, and it was his daughter, the one he never truly cared for, who had silently endured and sacrificed. You, he stammered, pointing at Hugo, unable to finish his sentence. My mother had begun wiping away tears, but I couldn't tell if she was crying for me, for Hugo, or for this suddenly broken family. I watched the scene unfold, feeling little satisfaction, only a faint sadness and the weariness of finally unloading a heavy burden. Dad. Mom. My voice softened, but it carried an undeniable firmness. I'm not here to argue. And I'm not here to be scolded. I just want to make things clear. I am still your daughter. But this family shouldn't have only me sacrificing and giving. Hugo needs to take responsibility for his own life. I will continue studying and work hard for my future. As for his troubles, I glanced at Hugo, trembling like a leaf. You're his parents. You deal with it, or let him handle it himself. With that, I didn't wait to see their reactions. I turned and walked toward my old room. I'm tired. I'll rest for a bit. I'm taking the train back to school tonight. I closed the door, shutting out the heavy sobs and my father's ragged breathing. I knew this family would need time to process everything. My parents' views wouldn't change overnight, and Hugo might have more outbursts. But today, the line I drew was as deep as bone. They would never again be able to demand endless sacrifice from me with such righteous arrogance. That was enough. I leaned against the door, listening to the muffled sounds of my father's angry murmurs, my mother's crying, and Hugo's desperate protests. Strangely, my heartbeat was steady. I took out my headphones from my bag, put them in, and blocked out all the external noise. The world fell back into quiet. My battlefield was never in this small home. It was out there, in that broader world, where I needed to run with all my strength. After an hour's rest, I opened the door, ready to catch my train. In the living room, only my mother remained. She was wiping away her swollen eyes, clearing the mess on the coffee table. Father and Hugo were both gone. When my mother saw me, she froze. Her expression complex guilt, helplessness, and a touch of confusion. Renelle, dinner is ready. Won't you eat before you leave? Her voice was laced with a hint of pleading and caution. I'm good, Mom. I'm in a hurry. I smiled. Distant but polite. I have things to do at school. I walked to the entryway to change my shoes. My mother followed, hesitated for a moment, and took out a few $100 bills from her pocket, pressing them into my hand. Here. Take this. Buy something to eat on the way. Don't go hungry. I looked at the money, sighing internally. This was probably the only way she knew how to express her apology and concern right now. I didn't refuse and took it from her. Thanks, Mom. I'm leaving now. Some cracks take time to heal. There's no need to rush. As I stepped out of the house, the afternoon sunlight was a bit too bright. I took a deep breath of the free air. And somehow, my back straightened a little more. Just as I reached the gate of the complex, my phone vibrated. A message from Silas? No, doubt. I don't even have his contact details. It was from the bookstore client, designer. Are you available? There's an urgent job. Good pay. Will you take it? I smiled slightly and quickly replied, I'll take it. Send me the details. Perfect. My world was rebounding. And it was running better and better. Back at school, I immediately dived into the urgent design project. It seemed that only by throwing myself fully into my work and making money could I wash away the fatigue and pressure that came from going home. This client's requirements were higher than the last one, and the deadline was tight. They needed the main visual and a series of posters for the launch of a niche mobile app. The pay was considerable, but the demands were extremely particular. The project manager was obviously a perfectionist with a sharp eye for detail. The email communication was precise and cutting. In my past life, this pressure might have overwhelmed me, or I might have doubted myself due to constant rejection. But now, I welcomed it. The more demanding the client, the more it pushed my potential. And the higher the quality of the work, the better my portfolio, the stronger my future negotiating power. I practically lived in the computer lab, surviving on bread and coffee. Occasionally, I'd stretch my stiff neck and notice Silas at his workstation across the room. He was either furiously typing code, frowning at a complex interface, or reading thick English books, his fingers unconsciously tapping a rhythm on the desk, completely immersed in his own world. We still hadn't exchanged a single word. But that quiet atmosphere, where everyone was focused on their own work, created a strange, almost magical space that made it easy to concentrate. Once, while I was struggling with a color scheme, I obsessively chewed on my pen, muttering to myself, "Tetchy, but needs some human warmth, mainly cool tones. But what color should I use for the accent?" My voice was so soft, it was almost a whisper. The sound of Silas typing paused for a moment. After a while, a small sticky note was pushed onto my desk with 2 long fingers. I froze, then looked over. Silas kept his gaze on his screen, as though he hadn't done anything. I picked up the sticky note. It had a small, clean color block combination drawn on it, deep space blue as the primary color, with a striking and vibrant war-under accent. Next to it, one word, "Try this." My heart skipped a beat. This color scheme was bold yet precise. Exactly the vibe I was going for. In fact, it was even better than I had imagined. I looked at him, stunned. He knew design? And had good taste? He seemed to sense my gaze, and finally turned his head slightly. His expression was still calm, but he raised an eyebrow, as if asking, "Is something wrong?" "Thanks, hadn't," I managed, pushing my surprise aside and quietly expressing my gratitude. I quickly adjusted the color values in my software. The effect was immediate. What had been a stiff, lifeless design came to life. It had the cool, touchy feel I wanted, yet still carried a touch of warmth that was surprisingly inviting. Perfect. I couldn't help but glance at him again. He was already back to his code, his profile focused, as if that brief interaction had never happened. How many more surprises does this guy have up his sleeve? In the end, I stayed up late, submitting my work just before the deadline. I anxiously waited for a response. Finally, heading to Velvet Rebirth Drama, the email notification pinged. I took a deep breath and opened it. It wasn't revision notes. It was the client's confirmation email. Along with full payment and an extra bonus. The email was full of praise, calling my design far beyond expectations. Precisely captured the core of the product, and of international standards. And they expressed interest in a long-term collaboration. The immense joy and sense of achievement overwhelmed the exhaustion from the past few days. I practically skipped out of the lab, feeling like the sunlight was brighter than ever. This money was enough to buy a high-performance laptop, and still leave me with a nice surplus. I immediately ordered the professional laptop I'd been eyeing for a while. And also bought myself a professional drawing tablet I'd always been reluctant to get. Rewarding myself was a given. As I walked back to the dorm, my steps felt lighter. My phone buzzed again. It was a WeChat message from my mom. A long voice message. I opened it, hearing a quiet background noise. My mom's voice sounded a bit tired, but there was more calmness than before. And a faint trace of concession. Ren, you're back at school now, right? Have you eaten? The situation at home. It's fine now. Your dad gave Hugo a good beating the other day. He even broke the belt. We came up with the money and paid it to his classmate. Your dad said this money is now Hugo's debt to us. And we'll deduct it from his allowance until it's paid off. We also apologized to the other family and the counselor. Your dad. You know his temper. He regrets what he said after. It was too harsh. You're on your own out there. Don't be too frugal. Spend what you need. If you run out of money, tell me. Study well. The voice message ended. I stood still, listening to it twice. I couldn't quite put my feelings into words. There was some sense of relief Hugo finally got a real beating. A bit of bitterness this family had clearly been hurt. And a faint sense of resignation. My father used the most traditional, rough way to discipline his son. But he also took responsibility in the most practical way, paying the compensation and making Hugo pay back. He wasn't sweeping it under the rug like before. My mother's attitude had softened as well. She was starting to show concern. This might be the best outcome I could hope for at this stage. As the saying goes, it takes more than a day to freeze 3 feet of ice. And melting it will also take time. I replied simply, got it. Mom. I'll be fine. You both take care of yourselves. No excessive emotional outbursts, just calm. But perhaps that was the best distance for now. Just as I put my phone away, I looked up and saw a familiar figure standing under the tall ginkgo tree outside the girls' dorm. As if waiting for someone. It was Silas. Today, he wasn't carrying his old bag. Just holding a computer case. He was still dressed simply in black, his posture upright, standing out against the autumn sunlight, looking somewhat conspicuously out of place. He saw me, his gaze lingering on me, not shifting away. His eyes seemed to be confirming something. And then he started walking toward me. My heart inexplicably started to race again. Is he coming to find me? He stopped in front of me, maintaining just the right distance. His voice, as usual, was cool, but the words he spoke left me stunned. Ren? He called my name with perfect accuracy. It's me. I was slightly surprised. How did he know my name? We weren't in the same class. And we had almost no interactions. He nodded, then pulled a USB flash drive from the side pocket of his laptop bag and handed it to me. The computer lab administrator asked me to return this to you. Apparently, you dropped it. It seems like there's an unsaved modeling file on it. It hit me like a jolt. I had been so exhausted the night before that I'd left the USB drive in the lab. And indeed, there was an unfinished assignment on it. It's mine. Thank you so much. I quickly took the drive, sighing in relief. This saved me a lot of trouble. I really appreciate you bringing it over. It was on the way. He gave a simple answer. His gaze lingering on my face for a brief moment before he suddenly spoke. You seem in a good mood. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I froze for a second. Then instinctively touched my face. Is it that obvious? He met my eyes. And for an instant, something akin to appreciation flickered across his usually emotional gaze. You look much better than the last time I saw you at the back door of the library. He actually remembered that? And noticed my mood at the time? Before I could fully process his words, he gave a small nod, preparing to leave. Leaving. Wait. On impulse, I called out to him. He stopped and looked back at me, his eyes questioning. That color scheme. Thank you. I waved the USB drive in my hand, feeling my ears grow warm. It was a huge help. And also, thank you for the band-aid and cotton pads last time. He looked at me, silent for a moment. After a few seconds, the corner of his mouth seemed to lift ever so slightly. The movement so subtle it might have been a trick of the light. No problem. This time. He truly turned and walked away, his figure disappearing quickly into the crowd of students. I stood there, holding the USB drive that had been returned to me, feeling as if a small stone had been dropped into my heart, sending out ripples of unfamiliar emotions. This person. He didn't seem as cold as he looked. The new laptop felt better than I had imagined. The screen colors were vivid and precise. And everything ran smoothly. I no longer had to deal with the frustration of that old computer that lagged when running a PowerPoint. The expensive drawing tablet was like an extension of my hand, its lines flowing smoothly, bringing me a sense of joy. Indeed, investing in myself was the most rewarding thing I could do. The success of the bookstore design and the app promotion project sent ripples through my small circle, like two stones tossed into a calm lake. Somehow, a teacher in charge of external publicity had heard about it and came to me, asking if I was interested in taking on the visual optimization for the college's official website and social media posters. The budget was limited, but it was an official job, which counted as an official recognition. After a moment's thought, I agreed. Money wasn't the priority, but this experience and the title would be invaluable for future internships and for enriching my sum. And so, I became even busier. Classes, personal design projects, website optimization, and learning new skills all piled up. But this kind of business felt fulfilling and joyful. Every minute showed me progress, and the numbers in my account were steadily growing. Silas and I became fixed partners in the computer lab. He always sat in the corner by the window, and I had gotten into the habit of taking the seat next to him. We still spoke very little, usually immersed in our own screens. But a silent understanding began to grow between us. Sometimes, when I got up to get water, I'd automatically bring his empty cup along. Other times, when he left early, he'd subtly tidy up my scattered books, making more space on the table. Whenever I encountered a tough technical problem, I'd frown, and without fail, I'd hear a soft cough or see him subtly adjusting his posture, giving me a tiny hint that often led me to find the solution on my own. He never directly gave answers, but always guided me at the right moments, helping me break through. This strange but effective way of communicating continued, until one day, when I was struggling to debug our complex interactive code. This was a new project I had taken on, and I had been stuck on it for almost 2 hours, causing serious delays. Frustrated, I ruffled my hair, almost ready to smash my keyboard. The sound of typing next to me stopped. Silas turned, staring at my screen for a full minute. Then, let out a lull sigh. He extended his hand and pointed to a nested logic loop in my code. Here. His voice was low. The condition check is redundant. It's dragging down the performance. Split it into 2 functions and use callbacks. I blinked, then took a closer look. Sure enough, it was a hidden beginner mistake. Thanks. I felt like I had found treasure and immediately started fixing it. But he didn't turn away right away. Instead, he leaned in slightly, his fingers quickly typing a few shortcut keys to open the performance monitor. Also, your rendering layering method is problematic. The GPU usage is abnormally high. Try turning off this option. His fingers were long and clean, moving with a speed that left me dazzled, exuding an air of absolute confidence. He had a faint, soapy fragrance, mixed with the smell of the computer lab's cooling fan, surprisingly pleasant. I followed his advice, and the lagging preview became as smooth as silk in an instant. The dramatic improvement in efficiency was a pleasant surprise. You're amazing. How do you know everything? I couldn't help but exclaim, looking up at him with wide eyes. He seemed a bit taken aback by my blunt praise, leaning back slightly to increase the distance between us. His gaze drifted to the window, and his tone returned to its usual indifference. I've run into similar problems before. That's a lie, I thought to myself. This clearly shows deep expertise. But seeing as he didn't seem comfortable with direct praise, I wisely didn't press the matter further and simply said sincerely, "Anyway, Hudingway, you've really helped me out. I'll treat you to bubble tea next time." Though I couldn't imagine what he'd look like drinking bubble tea. He gave a vague, reply, put his headphones back on, and shut himself off from the outside world. I could have sworn his ears looked a little red. I quietly smiled and went back to work, my mood buoyant. The project was completed half a day ahead of schedule, and the client was thrilled. They immediately added me to their pool of preferred collaborators, which meant the potential for more long-term, stable projects. Good things seemed to be coming in rapid succession. The draft for the college website redesign was approved by the professor, and was even praised in an informal department meeting. Before long, a younger student reached out through a classmate, shyly asking if I could help design a club recruitment poster for a fee. To top it off, the APP project manager contacted me again, this time with an even larger project, with an astonishing budget. However, they wanted me to submit a detailed concept proposal first, to be considered in a bid. The doors of opportunity were opening one after another. I excitedly, yet cautiously, took on all the work I could handle, like a sponge soaking up everything, learning and absorbing as much as possible. I practically lived in the computer lab. Occasionally, I'd look up from the screen and rub my sore eyes, only to find Silas had also paused to take a break. We'd briefly make eye contact, then look away, silently continuing our work. There was something strangely comforting about working side by side. On Friday night, I finally finished all the urgent tasks and decided to give myself a short break, heading back to my dorm early. After a shower and applying a face mask, I settled into bed, scrolling through my phone. I inevitably saw Amy's latest post on WeChat. There were no words, just a photo of a dimly lit bar corner. The table was littered with empty bottles, and a hand with black nail polish hung limply. The background blurred, but the atmosphere was clearly somber. Underneath, there were comments from people we both knew. "Baby, what happened? Did you guys fight again? I feel for you. Hugs." She didn't respond. I swiped past it, expressionless. "Respect. Best wishes." Locked. Then I clicked on Hugo's WeChat moments. The latest post was from a week ago, a screenshot of a game, captioned, "Bored." Further down, there was a post showing off his new AJ shoes, but it had been set to restricted visibility. It seemed the financial sanctions from home and that good old beating had made some impact, at least on the surface. Things had quieted down. That was good. I was still thinking when a new friend request popped up on WeChat. The verification message was simple and to the point, "It's Silas." My heart skipped a beat. On the phone screen, the words "It's Silas" seemed to have some magnetic force, drawing my gaze. My heart went out of rhythm. How could he suddenly add me? Was it because I helped him with the USB drive? Or was it something else? My finger hovered over the accept button, just as another incoming call notification abruptly popped up, cutting the screen. The call was from a local landline number. Familiar, but I couldn't immediately place it. A fleeting sense of unease passed through me. I furrowed my brow and hesitantly swiped to answer. "Hello?" There was a second of silence on the other end, and then a voice came through, one I had once been intimately familiar with, a voice I had repeated in my mind 1,000 times, hated passionately, and perhaps once deeply admired. Clear, deep, with an inherent, unquestionable sense of superiority and distance. It was Kieran. My blood seemed to freeze instantly, then surge back with a vengeance, flooding my limbs. The hand holding the phone tightened, knuckles turning white. How could it be him? "Ren?" His voice came through the receiver, calm and unwavering, with no hint of emotion, as if he was simply confirming an inconsequential name. Scenes from my past life flashed before my eyes like a blood-soaked slideshow, flashing relentlessly. Back then, how foolishly I admired him. He was the golden boy of the finance department. The student council president, from an illustrious family. Graceful and poised. The first love of countless girls on campus. I, on the other hand, was just a girl with a little design talent. Fortunate enough to be chosen by him to handle the visual design for several key student council events. His occasional praise and seemingly casual concern would make my heart race. And I would happily stay up late to work on revisions. Redoing things countless times. Even turning down several paid design gigs. I thought it was closeness. A unique favor. Until that one time. When a major error occurred in a large startup competition project he led, which was in collaboration with an off-campus company. The promotional images used in the project were a serious copyright violation, which the original author discovered and sent a lawyer's letter, demanding significant compensation and creating immense public pressure. At that time, he was the one who made the final decision on all the promotional materials. However, the image selection and initial processing were handled by me. I distinctly remembered that I had warned him about the risks of those images' sources. But he had dismissed it casually. Use them for now. It won't be noticed, and if there's a problem, I've got your back. But when the issue exploded, he was the first to change his face. At that suffocating emergency meeting, he sat at the head of the table. His face grim. His eyes scanned over every nervous person in the room, eventually landing on me. That look was cold and distant, full of indifference and scrutiny. Then, let out a low sigh. I heard him use the voice that had once seemed so incredibly charming. Clearly and cruelly saying to the responsible teacher and corporate representatives, the primary image selection and initial processing work were handled by Ren. I trusted her professional judgment too much and didn't do a second check. I take responsibility for not catching the oversight. However, regarding the lack of copyright awareness, I did remind her to improve in this area. Those few words pushed all the blame onto me. While he crafted an image of someone who was overlooked yet still reminded his subordinate of their duties, I felt like I had been struck by lightning, staring at him in disbelief. All the eyes in the room turned to me, filled with suspicion, accusation, and schadenfreude. I opened my mouth, wanting to explain, wanting to scream, saying, "That's not what happened. I warned you." But looking at his cold, silent warning eyes, all my words got stuck in my throat. I knew I had no evidence. All our communication had been verbal. He had never left any clear instructions in emails or chat records. And Rainey, my best friend at the time, timidly chimed in. "Ren, you didn't seem to care much about it back then. You said Kieran was so good, surely there wouldn't be a problem." Hugo had already been scared stiff, huddling in the corner, not daring to make a sound. And so, I became the perfect scapegoat. Naturally, I couldn't afford the compensation, and the immense pressure and stigma ultimately led to my being punished, leaving an indelible mark on my record. My once promising future was completely shattered. I desperately tried to plead, seeking Kieran to explain the truth, but he avoided me. In the end, all I received through someone else was a message: face reality. Learn your lesson. At that moment, I truly saw the man I had idolized beneath his facade. There was nothing but a cold, self-serving, and hypocritical scheme. His so-called affection was nothing more than finding a convenient fool, one who could be easily discarded when necessary. Hatred, bitterness, and humiliation. In the end, those emotions became the last straw that broke me during that scapegoat scandal. "Ren? Are you listening?" Kieran's voice came through the phone again, slightly raised, tinged with an imperceptible impatience, yanking me back from that cold, biting memory. A wave of nausea surged up from my stomach. I pinched my palm hard, the sharp pain immediately calming me. The churning emotions were forcefully shoved back into the deepest part of my heart, leaving only a cold, frozen indifference. "I'm here." My voice was so calm it even surprised me. Without a hint of emotion. "Who is this?" There was a brief pause on the other end, as if he hadn't expected me to react this way. He probably expected surprise, anxiety, or the same timid admiration I used to have. "It's Kieran." He stated his name with his usual air of self-assurances. as if he were entitled to be recognized. We worked together on the student union project before. I wanted to talk to you about something. Oh, Kieran. I responded in a detached yet polite manner. What's the matter? He seemed to be caught off guard by my businesslike tone, but quickly adjusted, maintaining his usual composure. I heard you've made great progress with your design skills. The optimization of the college website is impressive. I have a good project here that needs help. Are you interested? Another project. In my past life, he had used words like project, opportunity, and training to lead me step by step into traps. I almost let out a cynical laugh. Is this yet another pet where I'm supposed to be the scapegoat? Or does he think I've finally become useful and now wants to recycle me once again? Thank you for thinking of me, Senior. I replied flatly. But I'm currently busy with both my coursework and freelance work, so I can't spare the time. Sorry. A direct refusal. The silence on the other end lasted a little longer. Kieran probably hadn't been rejected so bluntly before. Especially not by someone who had once been so eager to please him. I won't take up too much of your time. The compensation is negotiable. He seemed to assume I was simply holding out for a better offer. It's not about the compensation. I interrupted him, my tone still calm but unmistakably firm. It's about my schedule and my interest. You should find someone else. Without waiting for him to speak, I added, sorry. I have something else to take care of. I'll hang up now. And with that, I ended the call decisively, not waiting for his response. I put the phone down, my palms still cold and faintly trembling. It wasn't fear, it was anger. The physical reaction of hatred being forced down. Why would he call me? Was it because of the college website project? Or had he been keeping an eye on everyone around him, always measuring their potential usefulness? This person was like a cold, venomous snake, sigh, constantly calculating the value of everyone around him. I took a few deep breaths, trying to calm my turbulent emotions. In this new life, I would never allow myself to be entangled with him again. My eyes fell back to the screen, where Silas's friend request still sat quietly. In stark contrast to the cold, nauseating feeling that Kieran brought, this request from Silas felt like a soft light, imbued with a reassuring, grounded strength. I didn't hesitate any longer and clicked accept. Almost immediately, a top of the chat window changed to, the other person is typing. A few seconds later, a concise message popped up. Next week, the intercollegiate programming competition team needs a UI designer. Interested in giving it a try? Silas's invitation was like a stone thrown into the still waters of my heart. The intercollegiate programming competition. UI design. These words were far from the dull, dismal path my previous life had led me on. But the name Silas carried a certain reassuring strength. Without hesitation, I replied, sure. What do you need me to do? There was no small talk. He immediately created a WeChat group with the cold name, Competition Team. There were 5 people in the group, including me. Apart from Silas, the other 3 were unfamiliar faces. Likely people he had brought in for technical expertise. Silas briefly outlined the project direction and my responsibilities: visual design and user experience for all visible elements of the project. He sent over a rough concept with only lines and boxes. An initial sketch. I took a deep breath, knowing the challenge was on. This was almost starting from scratch. But I didn't back down. I spent the entire night studying excellent designs for similar projects, piecing together their complicated technical ideas. And, with bloodshot eyes, created the first version of the concept draft. The next day, I sent the carefully formatted design to the group, feeling a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Minutes later, the group reacted. A guy named Leo was the first to speak up, his tone direct to the point of being harsh. Isn't this color scheme too bold? This is a programming competition, not an art exhibition. The priority of the functional modules isn't clear. It's all style and no substance. Another person, Kay, chimed in. It looks nice. But will it be too complicated to implement? The timeline might not allow it. My heart sank. That familiar feeling of being dismissed washed over me. I knew that collaboration needed to involve adjustments. but being so bluntly criticized still stung. I clenched my fists, about to type an explanation of my design rationale. At that moment, Silas's message popped up. It was just one line, but it felt like an anchor. Visual priorities should serve functional logic. Ren, please mark your interaction flow and the focal points for each interface. He didn't directly confirm or deny anyone's opinion, but instead provided clear technical instructions. I instantly understood what he meant: convince them with professionalism. Holding my breath, I refined the design, adding concise annotations beside each interface to explain the color psychology, visual flow design, and how the UI would guide users to immediately focus on the most important information and entry points. I sent it to the group again. This time, Leo and Kay remained silent for a while. Then Leo replied, looking at it this way, it seems to make some sense. Kay sent a thoughtful emoji, After you clarified it, the development logic is much clearer. I hadn't completely relaxed. But then, a third member, a girl named Amy, suddenly spoke up. But isn't the overall style too feminine? Most of the judges are male professors. Won't it be off-putting? This question was more subjective and harder to rebut. The atmosphere in the group instantly became a little tense. I stared at the screen, suddenly feeling weary. Why does it always feel like I'm expending energy on these endless internal conflicts and doubts? Just as I hesitated between arguing my point or compromising and making changes, Silas intervened again. He directly mentioned Amy, his tone still calm but carrying an undeniable weight. The judging criteria are innovation and user experience, not gender assumptions. This design aligns perfectly with the technology for all tone of the project and is professional enough. Then, read out a low sigh. He shared a collection of UI screenshots from past award-winning projects, many of which featured vibrant colors and strong design sensibilities. Let the work speak for itself. The group fell completely silent. After a while, Amy responded with, okay. Understood. A small team conflict seemed to have been effortlessly resolved by him. I looked at his concise but powerful words on the screen, feeling a complex mix of emotions: gratitude, and a warmth from being trusted and supported. The first offline meeting was scheduled for the weekend in the public discussion room. I arrived a bit early and, when I opened the door, I unexpectedly saw someone I definitely didn't want to see: Kieran. He was standing by the window, talking to a guy, wearing that familiar smile, seemingly gentle but actually distant. The sunlight glinted off his expensive cufflinks, reflecting coldly. My heart sank. What was he doing here? The guy talking to Kieran turned around. It was Leo. The same Leo from the group chat. He saw me and froze for a moment. Then a flash of awkwardness crossed his face. Kieran's gaze shifted to me, with just the right amount of surprise. Then it turned into a soft smile. Ren? What a coincidence. Leo's my junior. He told me about the competition, so I thought I'd come see if I could help. His words were flawless, but his eyes were like hooks, studying me carefully, as if assessing a lost and found item. Leo scratched his head, awkwardly explaining, Kieran has a lot of experience, so I invited him to help look at the structure. I immediately understood. Kieran hadn't given up. Through Leo, he had found another way in. A cold chill crept up my spine. He was like a ghost, haunting me at every turn. I gripped my notebook tighter, my nails digging into my palm, trying hard to maintain my composure. I nodded at Leo without looking at Kieran and chose the farthest seat from them. One by one, the others trickled in. Silas was the last to enter. He was wearing a simple black hoodie, but his presence was cold and imposing. He glanced around the meeting room, his gaze lingering on Kieran for half a second, and his brow furrowed just slightly. Anyone not involved can leave, he said, his voice cold, issuing a direct dismissal, aimed at Kieran. Kieran's smile froze for a moment but quickly returned to its usual ease. He remained composed, saying, Silas. Always so direct. Fine, hadn't so my sigh. I'll let you all talk. I won't disturb you. He stood up and, as he passed by me, his footsteps slowed. He leaned close, speaking in a voice only I could hear. Nice design. You've improved a lot. His tone seemed like praise but carried a venomous coldness. like a snake's hiss, making my stomach churn. So, he had seen my work. Once he left, the tension in the room lightened slightly. But the crack had already appeared. During the meeting, Leo seemed distracted. The suggestions he offered carried Kieran's shadow, emphasizing judge preferences and pragmatism too much. This clashed with Silas's insistence on technical integrity and user experience above all. Emmy seemed affected too, becoming more hesitant and cautious in her speech. The meeting efficiency dropped drastically. Silas spoke less and less, his expression growing colder. During the break, I went out to get some water and ran into Silas in the tea room. He was leaning against the wall, his head lowered, the brim of his hood hiding most of his face. The air around him was thick with tension. I filled my cup, hesitated for a moment, then walked over to him. Are you okay? I asked softly. He looked up, irritation still lingering in his eyes. But when he saw me, his expression softened slightly. I'm fine. His voice was hoarse. Just hate unnecessary trouble. I knew he was referring to Kieran. I hate it too, I whispered. My voice tinged with an emotion I didn't even realize, frustration and a quiet grievance. He's like a shadow you can't shake off. Silas watched me silently for a few seconds. Then suddenly spoke. Your design is good. You don't need to change it for anyone's prejudice. He paused, adding, unless it's a reasonable technical adjustment. This was the first time he had so directly affirmed me. My heart skipped a beat. All the gloom brought by Kieran seemed to lift. Just a little. With his words. Thank you. I looked up and smiled at him. I know. I'll stick to what I need to. He looked at me, his gaze deep, as if he wanted to say something more. But in the end, he just nodded. Back in the meeting room, Silas quickly shifted the direction of the discussion. Ignoring Leo's Kieran-influenced suggestions, he decisively pushed forward with the development plan based on the initial prototype. His stance was clear and unwavering, like a rock, steadying the wavering team. By the time the meeting ended, although the problems hadn't been fully resolved, at least the direction had been set. I gathered my things, preparing to leave, when Silas walked up to me. Don't worry. His voice was low, yet carried a convincing strength. I'm in charge of the team. He paused, as if making a decision, then took out a brand new, sealed thermos from his bag and pressed it into my hands. I've noticed you drink cold water at night. His tone was a little stiff, his eyes drifting elsewhere. It's not good for your stomach. Without waiting for me to respond, he lowered his cap's brim and quickly walked away, his ears seemingly tinged with a hint of red. I stood there, holding the thermos, still wrapped in its box, stunned. The tension caused by the conflict with Kieran and the team was suddenly washed away by a strange, warm, tingling feeling that felt foreign yet soothing. Carrying the brand new thermos back to my dorm, my heart felt like a restless little bunny, thumping away in my chest, mixed with an indescribable sweetness. Silas. Had he really noticed such a small detail? That I drank cold water at night? This discovery made my heart race even more than closing a major deal. I washed the thermos and brewed some more Mossmanthus tea. The fragrant steam seemed to lift away the unpleasantness of the day's meeting and the shadow Kieran had cast over me. Opening my laptop, I revisited the design draft. Silas's approval gave me more confidence. But Leo and Amy's doubts weren't without merit. The competition had its rules, and I needed to balance maintaining originality while aligning more precisely with those requirements. I stayed up all night tweaking the plan, toning down some of the more unconventional elements, while strengthening the visual guidance for the functional logic, making the design look both eye-catching and grounded. The next morning, I shared the revised version in the group, tagging everyone, especially Leo and Amy, with a brief explanation of my adjustments and considerations. This time, the responses came much faster. Leo, got it. This looks more stable now. Amy, yeah. I think this version is better. Even the usually silent technical team member gave a thumbs up. The small team crisis seemed to have eased, thanks to my proactive adjustments and communication. I breathed a sigh of relief. Sincerity and professionalism truly were the best ways to break down prejudice. However, my good mood didn't last long. In the afternoon, I went to the library to gather some materials, and accidentally overheard two girls from the finance department gossiping. "Hey, did you hear? Karen's startup project just landed a big investment." "Really? Isn't he just a third-year student?" "That's amazing." "Yeah. I heard the investors are really optimistic. And they praised the team structure, mentioning they have top-tier talent in tech and design. Apparently, heading fulfilled, they specifically highlighted how great the UI design is. My footsteps froze. A chill creeping up from my feet. Kieran's project? Top-tier design talent? He just reviewed our design draft yesterday. And today his project. I couldn't bring myself to think further, nearly running out of the library. I found a quiet corner and immediately sent Silas a WeChat message. "Where are you? I need to talk to you." He replied quickly, "In the computer lab." I rushed into the computer lab. And he was sitting in front of a screen. His brow furrowed. Seeing my pale face, he immediately stood up and led me out into the hallway. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice carrying an almost imperceptible note of concern. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and explained the gossip I'd overheard and my suspicions. "I suspect he's borrowed, or even stolen, our design concept and used it to enhance his project to attract investment." Silas's expression darkened instantly, his gaze becoming as sharp as a knife. He didn't immediately dismiss my suspicion but remained silent for a few seconds before pulling out his phone and dialing a number quickly. The phone connected, and he switched it to speakerphone. "Leo, I then fulfilled my obsession." Silas's voice was cold as ice. "What's going on with the UI of Karen's investment project?" On the other end, Leo seemed startled, stammering for a while. Under Silas's relentless questioning, he finally admitted the truth. Apparently, petting a wide sigh. After the meeting ended last night, Kieran had privately approached Leo, coaxed him into talking, and accidentally saw a screenshot of my earlier, bolder version of the design. Kieran had praised it, saying it had good ideas. And Leo hadn't thought much of it at the time. "Silas. I didn't know he would." Leo's voice was filled with panic and regret. "Enough." Silas interrupted him, his tone heavy with disappointment and ice, making Leo fall silent immediately. "No design drafts are to be shared before the competition ends. If it happens again, you can exit the project yourself." With that, he hung up decisively. The hallway fell silent. My suspicions had been confirmed, and I felt disgusted, as if I had swallowed a fly. So it was him. He would never change his vile, exploitative nature. "I'm sorry," I murmured, guilt and self-blame filling me. "If my design hadn't been so." "It has nothing to do with you." Silas cut me off firmly, his gaze deep and resolute. "The thief is despicable, and the leak is foolish. Your design is excellent. You don't need to apologize for the actions of vile people." His words were like strong arms, holding me up, keeping me from being swallowed by anger and guilt. So what now? The competition hadn't even started. And it seemed the creative concept had already been stolen. A flicker of cold light passed through Silas's eyes. "His is just a conceptual gimmick. He can attract investors. But in the actual competition, what counts is full implementation and core technology." He paused, the faintest trace of a confident, almost imperceptible smile on his lips. "And we have the best design and the strongest tech." He looked at me. "Do you dare to take that boldest version and make it even more perfect?" My heart skipped a beat, ignited by the confidence and challenge in his words. "What's to be afraid of?" I met his gaze, my fighting spirit fully awakened. "Good." He nodded. "The technical implementation is on me. You just go all out. Make it as stunning as you can." In that moment, an invisible, yet solid, alliance seemed to form between us. We would face our enemies together, trust each other, and hold nothing back. Back in the lab, we immediately threw ourselves into work. The previous barriers and hesitation evaporated, replaced by an unspoken camaraderie forged through shared purpose. My communication with Silas became extraordinarily efficient. He understood my design intentions and quickly provided technical feedback and possible expansions. Within his technical framework, I was able to push the visual creativity even further. Occasionally, heading for self-read session, I would look up and catch a glimpse of his focused profile, the light from the screen reflecting in his deep eyes, exuding a reassuring strength. Sometimes, he would also glance up, and our gazes would briefly meet in the air. No words were exchanged, but it felt as though we could read the determination and admiration in each other's eyes. By evening, I had worked so intently that I lost track of time, only realizing I hadn't had dinner when a slight ache began to gnaw at my stomach. I instinctively reached for my water bottle, but it was empty. The hot water in my thermos had long been consumed. Just as I was about to stand up to fetch some cold water, a hand, with prominent knuckles, extended toward me, gently placing his cup on my desk. Inside, there was steaming, pure water. I looked up in surprise. Silas' eyes remained fixed on the screen, his fingers quickly typing out lines of code, as though this was an inconsequential gesture. Yet, a faint, almost imperceptible blush on his ear betrayed something more. Drink something warm. His voice was calm, but the tone left no room for refusal. I stared at the cup, and something inside me, the softest part, was gently pricked. A night deepened outside. And in the room, the only sounds left were the clatter of keyboards and the soft hum of the server running. I picked up the cup, still warm from his touch, and took a careful sip. The warm liquid settled into my stomach, soothing away all discomfort and spreading warmth through my limbs. In a world filled with competition and betrayal, this silent support and companionship at this moment spoke louder than 1,000 words. The final days before the competition, the lab became our team's base of operations. The air was thick with the distinct smell of coffee, instant noodles, and the hum of electronic devices cooling, mixed with an unspoken, taut focus. Silas practically lived there. Every time I arrived, no matter how early or late, his desk was always lit. The sound of his keyboard tapping incessantly, never stopping. He seemed like an inexhaustible machine, precisely constructing the framework and structure of the program. I knew that he was slowly turning my boldest design into a seamless, brilliant reality. Our communication became extremely concise and efficient. I would often point to some detail of the screen's interaction, here, for the pull to refresh. I wanted to have an effect like stars scattering and then converging. He would pause for a moment. Applying particle system parameter tuning can achieve it, but loading time increases by 0.3 seconds. Is that acceptable? Sure. Prioritize the visual experience over the 0.3 seconds. I replied firmly. Okay, he said. And without further words, his fingers flew over the keyboard. This kind of highly synchronized collaboration brought a thrill that was hard to describe. It was as if we were sharing one brain, he, the left hemisphere of logic and computation, and I, the right hemisphere of emotion and creativity. During brief breaks, we would sometimes stand side by the window, watching the hurried pedestrians below in the night, silently sipping hot water, usually the water he had gotten for me. There were no need for many words. A silent understanding of working side by side flowed effortlessly between us. That night, once again, it was past midnight. The lab was empty except for the two of us. I was deeply focused on fine-tuning a particularly complex dynamic icon, my eyes aching with fatigue. Suddenly, heading suddenly, a steaming cup of milk was placed next to me. I looked up in surprise. Silas stood beside me, a visible trace of exhaustion on his face, faint dark circles under his eyes. Yet his gaze remained sharp and clear. Need some energy. Sugar helps maintain focus. His tone was still calm, as if stating a scientific fact. Thank you. A warmth spread through me as I picked up the cup, the comforting warmth reaching my heart. He had even thought to prepare this for me? I sipped the milk, the sweetness easing some of the tension from my nerves. He leaned against the desk next to me, quietly gazing out at the dark night sky. His profile, lit by the screen, looked softer in the dim light. It'll be over soon. He spoke suddenly, his voice carrying a hint of a rasp. I nodded. It will succeed. He turned back to me, his eyes focused intently on my face for several seconds, then lightly nodded. Because of you. he added, his voice low like a whisper, but clear enough to hit me right in the heart. My face instantly flushed, and my heartbeat went into disarray. I quickly lowered my head, pretending to drink the milk to cover up my sudden fluster. What? What did he mean by that? The air seemed to freeze, filled with a sweet, tense ambiguity. I could feel his gaze lingering on my head, burning into me, as if I might start to smoke from the heat. Luckily, having fulfilled my obsession, the sharp vibration of a phone broke the fragile atmosphere. It was Silas' phone. He glanced at the incoming call, his brow furrowing immediately, and moved a little further away to answer. I vaguely heard his cold voice. I told you. I don't have time. You handle your own business. On the other end, I could make out a woman's voice, crying and agitated, her words loud enough that I could almost make out a few phrases. Silas. Please. Only you can. But Silas' response was firm and cold, and he hung up after only a few sentences. When he returned, his expression was even colder than before, and the atmosphere around him was so heavy that it was almost suffocating, as though the tender "because of you" had just been a figment of my imagination. I wisely didn't ask any more questions. Everyone has their past and troubles they don't wish to discuss. Just like me. Don't I carry the blood feud of my previous life? The day of the competition finally arrived. The venue was crowded with elite teams from various schools, and the air was thick with an invisible sense of tension. We arrived early to set up the equipment. Silas and I double-checked the presentation process. Leo and Kay checked the code backups, and Amy was organizing the script. After the final adjustments, the team displayed a cohesive energy, ready for battle. However, fate had other plans. In the waiting area, we bumped into Kieran and his team. Kieran was wearing a well-tailored suit today, his hair neatly combed, exuding the aura of an elite leader. When he saw us, especially me standing next to Silas, a flash of malice passed through his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a perfect smile. Silas. Ren, let out a low sigh. What a coincidence. He greeted us with a smile, but his gaze swept over our equipment and our slightly tired, yet highly energized faces like a scanner. It looks like you're well prepared, he said, with a hint of challenge in his voice. I heard your UI concept is quite ahead of its time? His words were laced with an unmistakable probing tone and a subtle bitterness. Silas didn't even bother to lift an eyelid. He completely ignored him, focusing only on checking the connection cables. I responded with a cold, forced smile. Can't compare to Kieran. He's always the quickest at borrowing things. Kieran's smile froze for a moment, his eyes cooling. One of his team members stepped forward to say something but was immediately stopped by a raised hand from Kieran. He took a deep breath, donning his insincere mask once more, but his gaze pierced me like a poisoned needle. Junior. What you're saying? Creativity is always about borrowing from others, inspiring each other, and growing together. Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce. This is our project's newly hired visual consultant, designer Liu, just returned from abroad, a fashionable man behind Kieran, with an arrogant expression, nodded slightly. Kieran smiled knowingly. Consultant Liu had quite a few valuable suggestions for our initial UI concept. Looks like it turned out pretty well. Maybe he can also offer you some inspiration? It was an outright provocation. Not only had he stolen our ideas, but now he'd brought in a professional to polish the work, attempting to erase the originality of our design entirely. I was trembling with rage, my nails digging into my palm. Just as I was about to retort, a hand gently rested on my shoulder. It was Silas. His hand was warm and dry, offering a calm strength that instantly quelled my anger and trembling. He stepped forward slightly, positioning himself to shield me, then turned to face Kieran. But his gaze was as if he were looking at something entirely irrelevant. Are you done? Silas's voice was low, but the pressure it carried was overwhelming, as cold and sharp as a blade. Once you're done, move aside. Good dogs don't block the way. Kieran's smile completely vanished, his face turning ashen. But Silas didn't look at him again. He draped his arm around my shoulders and led me, along with the team, directly past them, heading for our own display station. His arm was strong, a barrier against the malicious looks and toxic air. Wherever his arm touched my shoulder, it felt as if a small flame had been kindled, burning intensely, but oddly bringing me a sense of peace. The battle was about to begin. And we were fearless. On the display stage, the lights focused. Our heartbeats synced with the ticking countdown. Silas was the one to present. Standing at the front, dressed simply in black, his presence filled the space. His words were succinct, and his logic clear, explaining the complex technological core with impressive clarity. Meanwhile, I controlled the demo equipment, making sure every pixel on the screen followed the path we had meticulously designed, flowing and blooming. When the final starry convergent refresh effect appeared perfectly, smooth and dazzling, drawing a quiet gasp of amazement from the judges and audience below, I knew we had succeeded. At the end of the demo, applause thundered. Silas looked at me. Across a few steps, our eyes met, and we exchanged a silent smile. Everything understood without words. It was the satisfaction and unspoken bond shared after reaching the peak together. In contrast, Kieran's team, while their demo was flashy, always felt pieced together and amateurish. The design style of their overseas consultant was clearly disconnected from the project score, and the judges quickly pointed out several user experience flaws. Kieran maintained his composure on the sidelines, but the tautness in his jaw and the occasional flicker of dark anger in his eyes exposed his defeat. The outcome was never in doubt. When the announcement came that our team had won the top prize, the spotlight shone on us. Silas, as team leader, stepped up to accept the award. In his speech, he first thanked each team member, but then his eyes swept past the crowd and landed precisely on me. Finally, hadn't filled way. His voice was steady but held an unprecedented strength. I'd like to give a special thanks to my UI designer, Ren. It's her exceptional design and creativity that gave cold, lifeless code warmth and soul. All eyes in the room turned to me. I stood at the bottom of the stage, looking up at him, my eyes slightly moist. The recognition in that moment washed away all the humiliation and regret of my past life. After the event, the crowd dispersed. I was excitedly discussing the next celebration plans with my teammates when my phone suddenly vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number, but the content was unmistakably familiar. Ren, are you happy now? Are you enjoying seeing me like this? If you had just helped me back then, I wouldn't have ended up like this. It's all your fault. You're cold-blooded. You're a hypocrite. It was Rainey. Even without the signature, the hatred and blame, along with the logic of always shifting the blame onto others, made it clear that it was her. I could almost picture what she must look like right now, probably in a huge fight with that scumbag again. Maybe finally abandoned, with no money and no love, cornered and desperate. And now, she had come back to me. Her former emotional trash can and ATM, dumping all her failures and fury on me. In my past life, such messages would have made me feel guilty and sad, and I would have been tempted to comfort her, even questioning whether I had done something wrong. But now, I felt nothing but a cold, calm detachment, even finding it a little laughable. I didn't reply. Not even a flicker of emotion. I pressed and held the message and chose to delete it. Respecting others' destinies. Letting go of the need to help. Her tragedy was the result of her own choices. Time and time again. What did it have to do with me? Just as I deleted the message, I heard Damie's voice, tinged with a bit of pity. Hey, look over there. I followed her gaze to the corner of the venue. There, Rainey was desperately clinging to the arm of a slick-looking guy, crying so hard her makeup was ruined. Her voice shrill. Why did you lie to me? I gave you all my living expenses to buy you sneakers. You promised you'd love me forever. The guy, visibly annoyed, shoved her away, cursing under his breath. Crazy woman. Get lost. Who the hell wants to be with you forever? Rainey stumbled and fell to the ground, looking utterly disheveled, crying out in agony. A crowd had gathered, pointing fingers, but no one stepped forward to help. Look at that. This is the love she had fought for. Even draining her friends dry to maintain. Without my financial support and emotional comfort, She finally hit the cold, hard reality. Feeling the excruciating pain. What remains to be seen is whether this pain will awaken her. I shifted my gaze away, feeling no stir within me. Her act had finally reached its tiresome conclusion. And as for my stage, it was just beginning. Let's go. Silas' voice came from beside me. I hadn't noticed when he had arrived at my side. But he too had seen the scene. Yet, he seemed unfazed. Simply looking at me. Celebration banquet. He effortlessly took the heavy equipment bag from my hands. Then did something that stunned everyone. He reached out his hand to me. His palm was broad. Fingers long and well-defined. Carrying the clean, strong touch unique to programmers. My heart skipped a beat. And I looked up at him. His eyes, still deep and thoughtful, no longer hid the visible focus and anticipation, teemed with an almost imperceptible nervousness. Around us, teammates chuckled kindly, teasing us. The light fell on him, then on me. I stared at his hand, then back at his eyes. The cold despair of my past life. The struggle of my rebirth in this life. The late nights working side by side in the lab. The unspoken connection on the competition stage. All these images flashed in my mind. Then, ran out a low sigh. Slowly, I lifted my hand and placed it gently in his palm. His fingers immediately closed around mine, holding my hand firmly. The warmth, dryness, and strength of his touch spread from my fingertips, washing over me in a wave of unprecedented comfort and flutter. We exchanged a smile, hand in hand, walking side by side toward the brilliant sunlight outside. Amidst our teammates' cheers and blessings. Behind us was Rainey's shrill, fading cry, and Kieran's frustrated yet doomed shadow. And ahead of us was our path. The atmosphere at the celebration banquet was lively and relaxed. The team members had shed the tension of the past few days, laughing and celebrating their success. Since the moment Silas and I clasped hands at the venue, we hadn't let go. Sitting in the corner, I could hear the ruckus around us. Feeling the warmth of his hand in mine, it brought an unprecedented sense of security and happiness that enveloped me. Occasionally, having fulfilled my obsession, teammates threw teasing and congratulatory glances our way. I would blush slightly but didn't release his hand. Silas, on the other hand, was perfectly at ease. He even used his free hand to serve me food and pour my drinks. His movements awkward yet earnest. In the middle of the celebration, my phone vibrated again. It was a long voice message from my mother. I hesitated for a moment but decided to open it. Her voice sounded more complex than before, tired, but with an acceptance-born calmness. Ren, I heard you won at the competition? That's great. Really great. Hugo. He found out. Didn't say much. Just locked himself in his room for a day. Your father. Didn't praise you. But drank a bit more at night. Since that incident. After paying the money back. Hugo seems to have calmed down. Even found a tutoring part-time job. Though it doesn't pay much. Out there. Take care of yourself. If you need money, just let me know. The voice message lacked the usual self-righteousness and moral manipulation, replaced by a cautious, conciliatory tone. I listened, then fell silent for a few seconds before replying, Got it, Mom. You all take care of yourselves. I have enough money. Don't worry. There was no closeness. No resentment. It felt more like I was addressing a distant, ordinary relative that needed some distance. Perhaps this distance is what's best for both of us. I am no longer their burden. And they are no longer my shackles. We exist on separate paths. Occasionally looking from afar. But not interfering with each other. And that's perfectly fine. After the celebration, Silas took me back to my dorm. The night breeze was cool, dispersing the noise of the day. We walked side by side on the quiet campus path. Our shadows long under the streetlighted. Occasionally crossing. Occasionally separating. What's your plan for the future? Silas asked. His voice sounding particularly deep and pleasant in the night. Keep taking orders. Earn money. And study. I answered crisply, having fulfilled my obsessor. Then added with a smile. Run out a low sigh. See if there are any bigger design competitions to join. Having tasted the thrill of peak collaboration, I was starting to get addicted. Good. He nodded. Together. Those two simple words felt like a solemn promise about the future. About us. When we reached the base of the dorm building, he stopped, facing me. The moonlight and the streetlight halos softly outlined his figure, making his sharp lines appear gentler. Ren. He called my name. His gaze focused as if filled with the light of the entire night sky. I used to think that code was the only logic in the world. But now, I think. He paused, as if embarrassed but still serious. What we create together is more meaningful. It wasn't grandiose sweet talk, yet it moved me more than any flowery words ever could, because it came from our shared passion and effort. It was the highest recognition of my worth. I looked at him, my heart softening, and I impulsively stood on tiptoe, quickly planting a kiss on his cheek. Together, we create. My face was flushed with warmth, but my tone was bright and resolute. He was clearly stunned, his ears turning visibly red, but then his eyes softened with a deep smile, the kind that was so bright it was blinding. He reached out, rubbing my head with force, but I bit my lip, forcing myself to calm down. Then, let out a low sigh. We'll do it. I nodded, turning and running into the dorm. I ran to the corner of the stairs, unable to resist looking back. He was still standing there, looking up at my direction, a smile still lingering on his lips, waving at me. In that moment, I knew I had truly rewritten my fate. Epilogue. Life seemed to have pressed the fast-forward button, yet it was fulfilling and steady. Silas and I became a low-key yet admired couple and best partners on campus. We took on projects together, studied together, sometimes going to see a movie on weekends, or simply staying in the lab, busy with our own tasks, occasionally looking up to share a smile. My design studio gradually gained recognition in the industry, and the pay soared, achieving true financial independence. News of Rainey occasionally trickled in. I heard she had finally cut ties with that scumbag and took a year off from school to return home, seemingly ready to start anew. I don't know if she has truly awakened, but that is her life, no longer related to mine. Hugo did ordinary part-time work, still failing his courses, but at least he no longer stirred up trouble. His relationship with the family remained awkward, but he no longer dared to make unreasonable demands. My father seemed to have aged a little, while my mother had learned to occasionally send me some local specialties from home, no longer making any demands. Kieran's project ultimately faded away after a brief burst of attention, due to the lack of core innovation and per-user experience. After graduation, he seemed to have joined a well-known company, still shining on the outside, but whenever people mentioned him, it always carried a tone of what a pity. He never appeared in my life again. On graduation day, the sun was shining brightly. I stood in my graduation gown, shoulder to shoulder with Silas, as we posed for a photo at the school gate. In the instant the shutter clicked, he suddenly turned his head, leaning close to my ear to whisper, "I have an idea for a new project. One focused on the future of human-machine interaction. It needs the best designers. Would you be interested in becoming my partner?" I looked into his eyes, where the light of dreams and the future sparkled, and smiled, nodding vigorously, heading vigorously. Of course. The wind blew, lifting the tassels of our caps, carrying with it our boundless hopes for the future. In this second life, I had finally learned the most important lesson, to let go of the need to save others and to respect their destinies. And then, let out a low sigh. With all my might, I vowed to protect my own stars and oceans. And I was incredibly fortunate that, in this journey, I found someone who could stand by my side and watch the stars shine. After being reborn, I carefully avoided every moment alone with Kian. When he said he didn't want to go home during the holidays, I packed my things and returned to the countryside by myself. When he brought Lyra home, claiming she had nowhere else to go, I moved out. When he decided to stay on at the university, I enrolled at the Capital University of Political Science and Law. In my previous life, in my old age, even my own child urged me to divorce him just to satisfy the desires of those two people in their lifetimes. holding the acceptance letter in my hands. Tears streamed down my face. No one knew that. Across both my limbs, I was actually decades older than I appeared. At the very last moment of filling in my university choice, I changed it to the Capital University of Political Science and Law. Even my homeroom teacher was puzzled. Didn't you say your fiancé was staying at the university? Going so far away to study. Can a long-distance relationship really work? At the mention of Kian, his young, handsome face immediately appeared in my mind. I knew the truth. Everyone thought I, as his fiancé, was overreaching. He had good grades, good luck, and was handsome, while I only had a distant childhood engagement as my claim to stand by his side. In reality, it was like a flower planted in manure. I smiled and said firmly, Teacher, it's a new century. Free love is what matters now. My childhood engagement with him was a relic of feudal times. It doesn't count. Perhaps she hadn't expected me to see sense. She patted my shoulder with relief. Having your own studies and career is the most important thing right now. I believe in you. Leaving the school, I walked against the flow of people toward home. In my previous life, I hadn't even attended university. A few days later, Kian and I were supposed to marry. I became pregnant quickly, and due to a difficult pregnancy, I stopped going to school. Kian, after staying at the university briefly, eventually went to work elsewhere. From then on, we were worlds apart. Two outsiders. He seemed to advance smoothly in his career, and wherever he went, Lyra followed with their son, a picture of mutual affection. I, however, was confined to a small world, tending to the elders and caring for the children. Watching my daughter grow from babbling child clinging to me, to someone irritated and distant, eventually drawn to Lyra's side. In the end, when I heard that she had married Lyra's son, it was from others. I only saw it through an old Mayberry photo of her holding her husband's arm in respect. Kian and Lyra smiling at each other so affectionately. Later, my daughter repeatedly urged me to divorce. She said, Mom, Dad has worked hard his whole life. If not for you, he would have been with Grandma long ago. She paused, touching her own belly. Mom, from any perspective, you two don't match. Dad is a successful engineer, while you never even went to university. Why can't you just let go? I'm pregnant now, and Grandma is taking good care of me. Give us a happy and complete family. But what could I do? I refused to give in. When my in-laws couldn't manage themselves, I never rested, day or night, while he indulged in affairs. When my daughter had a fever at midnight, I walked barefoot 5 kilometers in the freezing wind to see a doctor, while he took another child to the amusement park and tutored someone else's kid. I sacrificed everything for this family, only for him and everyone else to say, even my own daughter, we're not suitable. Everyone blamed me for not letting go. But I wouldn't. Even if it killed me, I wouldn't let them get what they wanted. Whether they ended up together after my death, I couldn't care. Nor did I have the strength. I remember the last time my daughter came to urge me to divorce. She spoke at length, and when I remained silent, she angrily walked away. She didn't know that before the door closed, my high blood pressure had flared. I called after her, but she left without looking back. I watched him walk step by step into the sunlight. In that moment, I regretted giving birth to her, even abandoning my studies, wasting my life. But fortunately, I had been reborn. Back before my marriage to Kian, everything was still salvageable. Back home, I hid my acceptance letter and started cooking. This one-bedroom to living room apartment belonged to Kian's workplace. During a pause in cooking, I found the day next month when I was to report to the university on the living room calendar and circled it in red with a firm stroke. I gazed at the circled date with anticipation, imagining myself diligently studying in a classroom. Very soon, I would be free. The moment the meal was ready, Kian returned. As expected, Lyra followed with the child. Sister-in-law, sorry to bother you again, she said. True to her name, Lyra was like snow, fair-skinned. An oval face, wearing a pale yellow coat that made her appear like a spring flower, full of vitality. The boy, used to the routine, helped himself to the food I had prepared, one bowl for himself, one for Kian, one for Lyra. But there was none for me. When I emerged from the kitchen, they were already laughing and eating together like a family. The first bite, however, made all three spit out the food. "Mom, it's too salty." Kian quickly poured water for his wife and son, only for it to taste bitter. In the end, Lyra left in tears, not forgetting to apply eye drops for me before going. "Brother-in-law, does your sister-in-law dislike me visiting? I won't come again." Kian had a low sigh. "Don't blame her." Kian saw them off and returned, frowning, about to lose his temper. I ignored him, walked into the kitchen, and quietly ate the takeout I had ordered earlier. "You did that on purpose?" he asked, puzzled. The gentle me from before would never have acted this way. Then he explained. Lyra and her husband knew each other since childhood. Before he died, he asked me to look after them. "Your cooking is good, and the child likes it." I paid no attention, quietly finishing my meal. Kian sighed, seeming to relent. "Since you don't like it, I won't invite them to eat here anymore." The next day, after Kian left, I unpacked my bundle, preparing for a short trip back to the village. Though our marriage was only arranged in childhood, both families had exchanged tokens and even compared our birth dates. If we were truly to part ways, the annulment had to happen with the villagers present, to prevent any future disputes. As I packed, my eyes fell on the quilt and pillows I had secretly embroidered years ago, full of love and hope for the marriage that never came. After a moment of thought, I stuffed them into a bag, along with the new shoes I had made, intending to discard everything at once. Yet, when I reached the trash, a pang of reluctance stopped me. Not because I was sentimental, but because it felt wasteful to throw away all that effort. So I went to the pawn shop at the end of the street. The items I had spent years embroidering fetched 50 yuan. It wasn't much, but in college, food and daily expenses were a considerable cost. This money would go straight into savings. Back home, I crossed off today's date on the calendar. 20 days remained. In 20 days, I would escape this place and claim my freedom. Kian returned late. The meal I had prepared remained untouched. "I ate at school," he explained casually. But the faint scent of rose perfume clinging to him revealed the truth. Though he had eaten, it had been with Lyra and her son. He had cleverly avoided eating at home to prevent offending me. I silently cleaned the dishes and returned to my room. My bedroom overflowed with high school books and papers. So many were pushed into the living room. I tied up the books in my bedroom with rope and left the rest in the living room for Kian to handle the next day. Since I was leaving, nothing of mine should remain here. As I packed, a knock came at the door. I knew it was Kian. He was always polite and would never enter my room without permission. "What is it?" I asked, not wanting him to see me tiddying up. After a pause outside, he spoke again. "I'm preparing the marriage report. Can we set the date for the 9th of next month?" The 9th, the exact day Kian and I had married in my past life. I glanced at my packed bundle and replied lightly. "Marriage is important. We can't just pick a date casually. Let me ask tomorrow before deciding." Silence followed. Then I heard his footsteps fade away. I exhaled and leaned against the bed. With his current position, filing a marriage report required no approval from the office. And since my parents had been gone since I was young, Kian's parents had brought me into their home due to our arranged engagement. To everyone else, I was already a member of the Kian family. The marriage report was purely formal. Besides, he was good-looking, successful, and treated me well. Anyone could see that my heart already belonged to him. I did owe the Kian family, but last lifetime, I had repaid that debt. This time, I owed them nothing. I would walk my own path, a path without Kian. The next morning, I was surprised to find Kian had prepared breakfast, my usual fried eggs and 8 treasure porridge. "I made your favorite breakfast. Come eat," he said. But he didn't know I had eaten those dishes only because he liked them. I silently sat down. Only the occasional scrape of a spoon against a bowl broke the quiet. "I'll take a day off and go back with you," Kian suddenly said. Startled, I shook my head instinctively. "I'll drive you." It's not safe for you to go alone. He frowned. Just as I searched for an excuse to refuse, a small child burst in. Godfather. The boy held a basketball and dived straight into Kian's arms. Yang. What are you doing here? Kian instinctively glanced toward the door. Where's your mother? She's waiting downstairs. The boy replied proudly, glancing at me. Godfather. Come play basketball with me. I quietly observed this child, the son of the woman Kian had married in my previous life, who had never appeared before me. Only 3 years old, yet already showing signs of being a handsome young man. Even for years older than my daughter, she revered him and his mother like gods. Kian followed Yang downstairs in a hurry, saying Lyra had been waiting for some time. He left without a word. I smiled quietly. At least now I didn't need to find an excuse to go back alone. I grabbed a pen and marked a day on the calendar with a bold X. 19 days left. I quickly gathered all the books from my room, stacked all the notes, textbooks, and papers from the living room, tied them together, and prepared to sell them. Only after selling everything and holding 20 yuan did I set off for the village to annul my engagement with Kian. The elders were kind enough, and convincing them to cancel the engagement wouldn't be difficult. I only needed to explain that while Kian's star was rising, we were not right for each other. The rural courtyard was silent and oppressive. A small bonfire burned, mosquitoes circling above. I swept the dust along the earth wall, gathering it like fragments of my former self. Uncle and aunt sat silently on the doorstep. After a long pause, they sighed deeply and began to speak with earnest concern. Thea, even if he has someone else in his heart, you have a betrayal. If he dares not marry you, I'll deal with him. Your parents entrusted us to look after you before they left, and you what on a low sigh. Seeing that I remained silent for a long while, they exchanged a glance and sighed helplessly. Tell me, why are you so stubborn? Let's go. Find the village chief. I followed them quietly. The village chief issued the certificate for us, and the tokens from the original engagement were exchanged back in front of several elderly witnesses. I let out a soft breath, supporting the 2 elders as we walked back. I knew, deep down, they were only looking out for me. By all accounts, Kian was a prized catch in everyone's eyes. So even his own parents couldn't fathom why I insisted on breaking the engagement. But I couldn't explain. I couldn't say that in my previous life I had suffered enough, so much so that my only daughter was born to Lyra, becoming part of their family, while I remained utterly alone. The engagement was officially annulled. The elders told me that from now on, I would be considered their daughter. I didn't mention my plans to study in the capital. Yet, I stayed with them for half a month. When it came time to leave, they accompanied me all the way to the village entrance, chattering on and on, urging me to always think of this place as home and to return often. Only when I reached the town to buy my bus ticket did I notice that they had slipped me 200 yuan into my bag. Tears flowed freely. Back home, I marked 15 big red X's on the calendar. Only 4 days left. Just 4 days. I was about to go to my room with my luggage when I heard the door open. Kian had just returned from work, followed by Lyra and Yang. You're back? Kian looked surprised to see me. Lyra gave me a polite nod before heading into my room. I frowned as I watched her casually close the door behind her. Even my belongings, carelessly piled in the living room, had been moved. I glanced at Kian. He hesitated, as if remembering something. Well, it rained heavily a couple of days ago, and Lyra's place leaked, so she's staying here temporarily for a couple of days. I thought you weren't here, and your room didn't have much, so she could stay temporarily. So, without my consent, he could just toss my things aside and let someone else occupy my room? He paused again, seeing that I hadn't spoken, then added, by the way, move your things to my room for now. You can stay with me temporarily. He opened his door as he spoke. And your books? Why do you have so few? I saw the small bundle he had placed on the nightstand and pressed my lips together. Fine. After all, this room was his. What he did here had nothing to do with me. They're no use now that I've finished the college entrance exams. So I sold them. I explained lightly. Kian frowned. Even if the exams are over, the books could be useful later. Why sell them? I pressed my lips tighter and stayed silent. Seeing my continued silence, he asked, by the way, what about your parents? He took the bundle from my hands. I hesitated, then said, we checked the dates, it wasn't auspicious. I'll tell them later. This was the excuse I had agreed on with my uncle and aunt. Just to buy some time. When I left, I would explain everything. Kian seemed to suspect nothing. Or perhaps he simply didn't care. Nodding faintly and muttering, looks like we'll need to pick a new date. Then he left. He said he would cook and that I should rest a bit after returning. I noticed the marriage report he had prepared on the desk by the window, only the date was left blank. As I shifted my gaze from the report, intending to help, I heard the faint voices of 3 people outside. The man's voice was low. The woman's playful. The child's cute. I quietly sat back down. Technically, our engagement was over. It wasn't proper for us to live together, let alone in the same room. But with only 4 days left, renting elsewhere wasn't feasible. I decided I'd eat, then sleep on the floor in the living room before bedtime. After a full day of travel, I had hoped to rest early. But Lyra, full of energy, heading to Velvet, was in the living room practicing dance in a white dress, using a mat to stretch. Yang Yang ran in and out of Kian's room, even using his bed as a trampoline. I had no choice but to use the pretext of fetching water, taking a basin with me. Once outside, I drew a deep breath. Thea, why are you back? Weren't you going to visit your in-laws? And Hua, from next door, appeared with a basin, walking with me toward the well. Just for a few days. I just got back today. And Hua's husband was an accountant at the local mine, and they lived comfortably. They often shared small treats with me, so we got along well. Oh, I say, you what out a well sigh. Aunt Hua began to scold but paused. Looking behind me, she tapped me a few steps forward, then at the well, gave my forehead a firm tap. I say, why are you so foolish? What's good about that man? Dead or alive? He flaunts himself everywhere. And you bring all the trouble, huh? Jez, you're young and naive. That Zhao Zhang of yours? A prize everyone wants a piece of. And you brought him into your house? Are you crazy? Listening to her chatter, I realized that 2 outsiders. Kian claimed it was my idea to bring Lyra home, saying I pitied her as a widowed, disaster-stricken girl. I laughed bitterly. Kian was just trying to shield himself from gossip, using me as a front. I wasn't going to argue now, so I smiled silently. And Hua repeatedly reminded me to get rid of such troublemakers sooner rather than later. Worried I was too polite, she offered help if needed. Though part of her was curious for gossip, she was still a good person. Back inside, the living room was empty. I took my clothes to the bathroom but noticed many foreign women's items had appeared. My usual soaps and towels had been shoved into a corner basin with the trash. In their place were 2 new towels, a shampoo bottle, and a hairband. Ah, sister-in-law. Yang Yang needs to use the potty. Could you move aside? I was deliberately bumped into the doorframe, my head hitting it. Lyra was holding Yang Yang at the potty. Seeing me lingering, she whispered, sister-in-law, please move. You're in my way. Though her voice was soft, the smugness and contempt in her eyes were clear. But I didn't move. Apologize, I said calmly. Lyra froze, clearly not expecting me to show us our face. But she did have a clever son. Yang Yang had never liked me. And sensing the tension between his mother and me, he suddenly shoved me hard, wailing loudly, you're bad. You're bad. You're bullying my mom. Bad person. Kian, hearing his cries, dashed out of the house. What's going on? What happened? He cradled the child tenderly, while Lyra, her eyes red, quivered as she tried to explain. It's my fault. Yang Yang had to go to the bathroom. And a sharp slap cut her off mid-sentence. Kian turned to me, shocked. Apologize. For a moment, the other 3 seemed frozen in time. Seeing nothing else, I stepped out of the bathroom. From inside came the child's sharp cries again. Don't cry. Don't cry. Godfather will ask Auntie to apologize. Alright. Kian's gentle voice soothed him. Lyra. Thea didn't mean it. Kian. It's fine. I know she's never liked us. Click the door shut, cutting off their voices. I noticed Kian entering, pausing as he saw me packing. From his expression, I knew he wanted to lecture me on how to care for a child properly, not to quibble over a minor incident, and maybe get me to apologize. Sit, he said. Obediently, he sat, and I fetched a piece of paper, dabbed it against the wound on my head, and handed it to him. A stark red stain marred the sheet. Kian tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. His face turned alternately pale and green. A sight of distress. I'll sleep in the living room tonight. I took the bedding and opened the door. Wait. Kian grabbed my arm. You can sleep in the room. Why go out? He thought I was angry about the earlier incident and sighed, pulling me back. Yang Yang is just a child. Lyra didn't act maliciously. You're an adult, you shouldn't hold grudges against a kid. A guest has arrived. I know you don't like Lyra, but she's not an easy person either. Don't be petty. Alright? Was angry about the earlier incident and sighed, pulling me back. Yang Yang is just a child. Lyra didn't act maliciously. You're an adult, you shouldn't hold grudges against a kid. A guest has arrived. I know you don't like Lyra, but she's not an easy person either. Don't be petty. Alright? I sneered. So you brought her here? And then said it was my idea? Kian's breath caught. He opened his mouth but couldn't utter a word. I smiled. See? No matter how noble his words sounded, his inner agitation and messy thoughts couldn't fool anyone. For the sake of the elder's face, I wasn't going to ruin his career. But that was all I could do. That night, Kian slept on a mattress in the living room. The next morning, I rose early, packed all my things, and planned to find a hotel before returning for my luggage. When I opened the door, I found Kian had already prepared breakfast. Yang Yang snorted upon seeing me and pushed the food toward himself and Lyra. Kian carried the fried eggs over and smiled at me. You're up? Come. I made fried eggs for you. Seeing the food in front of Yang Yang and Lyra, he chuckled awkwardly. Good boy. Share some with Auntie, having fulfilled my exertion. Okay? I ignored them and walked out. The nearest hotel was just a street away. I booked the cheapest room 3 days for 21 yuan. After paying the room fee and deposit, I bought steamed buns and fried dough sticks from a nearby breakfast shop. Returning, I was met with a scene of chaos. My packed bundle had been opened, its contents strewn everywhere. My college admission notice had been taken by Yang Yang, who was folding it into a paper airplane on the table. My head spun. What are you doing? I snatched the notice back, startling him so he fell off the table, wailing. His screams drew Lyra from another room. What are you doing? Who told you to bully Yang Yang? She pushed me, clutching the child protectively. I trembled with anger, carefully unfolding the notice. I'm bullying him? Look at what he's done. Who told you to touch my things? Get out. Lyra stood, glaring at me with her child in her arms. Huh. You're not even married to Kian yet. You don't get to decide here. She paused at the door, then turned back. Even if you were married, you still couldn't win against me. The door slammed shut. Lyra's hostility toward me always surfaced when Kian wasn't around. I had once felt inferior, timid. She was attractive, successful, and a pillar of the cultural troupe. I always thought I couldn't compete. But living it over, I finally fell free. Why should I compete with her? In Kian's heart, of course Lyra was important. But besides Kian, didn't I have my own life? I could go to university, contribute to my country's legal system, broaden my horizons, gain experience. This quagmire would only hold me back. After tidying all my things, I marked the calendar with another bold axe. Slinging my backpack over my shoulders, I headed to the booked hotel. When I had first returned to this life, I had considered confronting Lyra at her workplace. She had ruined my past life, and my anger was hard to contain. But what good would it do? As long as Kian existed, even if Lyra lost her job, he could still support her. In truth, It wouldn't seriously hurt Lyra and her son. As long as I honored the elders' care for me. As long as I didn't want to utterly ruin Kian. Lyra remained untouchable. Then again, it was her husband with a questionable heart. Lyra had many comrades, why were they not taking care of her and Yang Yang? Acting as the child's godfather? At the hotel, I unpacked lightly and took out stationery, intending to leave Kian a letter. Setting aside his absenteeism after marriage, and the lifelong entanglement with Lyra, I focused on the 3 years I had spent in high school here. He had provided for me, even sometimes helping with homework. For that alone, I owed him a proper explanation. In the letter, I wrote that I had gone back to an oldie engagement and that I had been admitted to another university. From now on, our paths would diverge, never to cross again. Halfway through writing, a knock came at the door. I assumed it was hotel staff, but when I opened it, Kian stood there, dust-covered, as if he had run far and wide. Seeing me, he visibly relaxed and exhaled. Finally found you. I'm glad. I'm really glad. I stayed silent, bracing myself for his inevitable scolding. All right. Don't be mad. Come back with me, Kian said as he squeezed in, reaching to help me pack. Quick as ever, I pressed the half-finished promissory note under my hand, but his gaze fell on a silver bracelet in a bundle. His expression shifted as he picked it up. How did this bracelet end up here? I froze, annoyed at myself for not putting my things away properly. Yang Yang rummaged through my things this afternoon, and a bell fell off. I fixed it, I explained. This bracelet had been our engagement token from childhood. I had brought it back last time. Kian's expression turned strange. I mean, why is this bracelet with you? Shouldn't it be with my mom? I racked my brain for an answer, but he suddenly laughed. I get it. My mom asked you to bring it over for me, didn't she? He returned the bracelet to the bundle. Leave it here for now. We're getting married soon anyway. What's mine is yours, you keep them together. I exhaled in relief, still keeping my hand pressed on the bundle. Kian frowned. What? Still angry? Yang Yang was wrong. But he's just a kid. Stop making a fuss. Do you know how worried Lyra was when you ran out like that? She went out alone at night to look for you and even scraped her knees. She's still lying at home now. I just don't get it. Yang Yang's always been so well behaved. But whenever you're back, you end up in conflict with her. You? He trailed off when he saw my calm gaze, suddenly at a loss for words. I laughed. You know, an into Sylvide session. This afternoon your son rummaged through my bundle. I told him to scram. But your Lyra said I had no right to tell her to scram. She even said that even if I married you, I couldn't win against her. I watched the color drain from his face. What do you mean? Your son? That's your godson. I ignored him and continued. You always use the excuse of caring for your late brother's wife to get close to her. But if your brother knew how you've been caring for his wife, do you think he'd stay at rest? I laughed bitterly, piercing Kian's self-deception with blunt truth. Do you even realize you're about to get married? You bring people over under my name, knowing it's dishonorable. Who exactly are you trying to fool? His face changed dramatically, his body seeming to wobble. After a long pause, he said hoarsely, since you're not going back, and reflect on this here, I'll come back in a few days to pick you up. Kian turned and fled in embarrassment. I never meant to wrong you. I'll go submit the marriage report. Listening to his stumbling footsteps fade, I closed the door expressionlessly. Ridiculous. In his eyes, him filing the marriage report and marrying me was some immense favor I should be grateful for. The next day, I went to my teacher to collect my train ticket, afraid I wouldn't get a reserved seat. My teacher had secured one in advance and asked contacts in the capital to keep an eye out for me. After lunch with my teacher, I bought some local specialties for my future roommates. That evening, I went to bed early. I expected a sleepless night, full of longing and restless thoughts. Surprisingly, I fell asleep quickly, no dreams, just deep sleep. Early the next morning, I handed my prepared letter to the hotel front desk, checked out, and dragged my luggage to the train station. 2 days of a swaying, jolting journey left me dazed and half asleep. Only upon arriving at the university did I finally breathe a sigh of relief. After completing enrollment procedures, the real challenge began: studies. In my previous life, I never got to step onto a university campus. This time, I cherished every moment. Apart from eating and sleeping, I was either in class or in the library. When Kian's first letter arrived, I had already been in school for 3 months. I wasn't surprised he knew my whereabouts. My teacher had informed me a month prior that Kian had asked after me and knew I had arrived in the capital. His letter insisted he did not agree to the broken engagement. In his heart, I was still his wife. He claimed there was nothing between him and Lyra, that he only treated her like a sister, and that he had already asked her to leave his room and would never see her again. He said he would wait for me to return. Along with the letter came 100 yuan. I kept both. Untouched. University life was demanding, and I had considered a part-time job. Although my grades were top of the class and I had a scholarship, the monthly living expenses were still tight. When my teacher learned of this, he scolded me, then sent 50 yuan every month, explicitly stating in his letters that it was a loan. At the end of the letter, he even added playfully, "Don't worry. Your teachers know and fully support you." For some reason, tears suddenly streamed down my face. In my previous life, no matter how hard it got, I had been hysterical, angry, regretful, but I had never cried. This life was the same. Yet now, the dam broke. I cried my heart out, even startling my roommates, who came to comfort me. Afterwards, I threw myself even more into my work. Kian's letters continued monthly, always accompanied by 100 yuan. In the final month of the semester, he wrote, claiming I wouldn't want to return, yet asking me to wait for him, saying he would come spend the new year with me. He never came. The letters stopped abruptly. Later, I learned from my teacher that Kian and Lyra were getting married. His letter explained, "This matter caused quite a stir. I heard he had applied for a transfer to your location, but someone reported him for misconduct with women. Since you had already left, there were no victims to testify, so the matter was suppressed. That woman lost her job. He had no choice but to marry her. Finally, heading fulfilled Yabsai." My teacher wrote earnestly, "At this moment, I feel incredibly relieved for you. You are truly fortunate. I know that my life has been a fortunate one. Fortunate to be reborn before filling out my college applications. Fortunate to avoid the quagmire of my past life." The next letter from Kian arrived a year later. The first words were an apology. Then he revealed that the person who had reported him was none other than Lyra herself. She had learned that Kian submitted a transfer request. Lyra begged him to stay, but he refused, so she took a reckless path and she won, marrying Kian. He said that only later did he understand the meaning behind the dates I had marked on the living room calendar. He had always assumed they were days I had looked forward to marrying him. I smiled and burned all the letters. As for the money Kian sent, I forwarded it all to my teacher for delivery. 2 years later, before graduation, I began intern early at one of the capital's top law firms. Kian epilogue. That day at the hotel, after hearing Thea speak in my tongue and Ofai, I was furious beyond reason. I locked myself in for 3 whole days. When I returned home, I realized I had truly been at fault. I had made a mistake by letting my mind wander while waiting for Thea to grow up. Each time I helped Lyra, a part of my heart drifted away. Her thoughtfulness, Yang Yang's cheerfulness, they made me forget that I already had a Fiang key and led me to actions that shamed even myself. After 3 days of reflection, I knew clearly that I could not be without Thea. I went to the hotel, but it was too late. She had left, leaving me behind. I asked many people, but no one knew where she had gone. Finally, heading to Velvet, I learned from her teacher that she had gone to the far northwest. My world collapsed. I thought of the silver bracelet that should never have been in her bundle and rushed home. But my family told me she had already annulled the engagement. I wandered back to the apartment we had shared for 3 years, lost and desolate. That night, I drank too much. Lyra had snuck in. Later, when she saw my transfer application, she caused a scene, then left for work. Her family came to stir trouble, forcing me to marry her. Gradually, my friends distanced themselves from me. I wrote to Thea, but she never replied. It was as if leaving had erased her from my world. After marrying Lyra, she watched me obsessively, throwing tantrums at the slightest provocation. My parents also disliked her, constantly comparing her to Thea. Lyra changed hysterical, neurotic. Every opportunity I had to transfer or advance was thwarted by her. Each time, she accused me of wanting to leave her, while secretly I could only smile bitterly. By now, Thea would probably feel disgusted even seeing me. To her, the man Lyra constantly scrutinized was nothing. Later, I watched my friends rise while I remained stagnant. Slowly, Lyra began to claim I had no future. She wanted another child. Eventually, Hattie fulfilled were inside. We had a daughter. Postpartum, Lyra suffered depression and treated our daughter poorly when I wasn't looking. I sent Lyra back to her parents and raised our daughter myself. But as she grew, I discovered something shocking. Our daughter wanted to marry young Gang. They were half-sibling. The household descended into chaos, and my parents were bedridden with stress. Looking back on my life, it was utterly meaningless. Thea epilogue. Hello, teacher. Thea, how have you been recently? Pretty good. I just finished a case and finally managed to buy a place near the firm. Teacher, you should come visit during summer break. Sure. One of my students is also a lawyer. Maybe you too. Teacher. I interrupted. I just became a partner at the firm. I'm too busy to think about relationships. Right now, I just want to work hard and earn money. All right. By the way, Thea, do you know about Kian? Teacher. I paused. I haven't cared about Kian's life for a long time. It's none of my business. Whatever happens, it's the consequences of his own choices. After hanging up, I gazed through the office window at the bustling streets in the distance. I threw myself entirely into the career I loved. Kian had long vanished from my life. And that was the end.